Welcome to episode 95 of the Plastic Posse podcast. We appreciate all of you coming by and listening in for another episode. We also want to give a special shout out before we get started to all of our patrons who help bring you the Plastic Posse, and also a special thanks to our podcast partners, Tankcraft, Tamiya USA, and AK Interactive. Well, we've got everybody except for Jensen tonight. He's feeling a little bit ill and under the weather, so the other five of us will carry on without him. Let's start with TJ. And TJ, what have you been working on? What's on the bench?
Well, right now I've got mainly the my SMC project, which is the Fort Moore Lima Locomotive Works M4A1. Been working on that a little bit. Haven't done a whole lot on it. I've got the lower hull built. I posted a thing on my Facebook page. It's kind of like a mishmash of different kits. And I think you'll hear later when we're talking to Ken Childres, that's one of the things I really like about building Shermans is just throwing them together out of a whole bunch of different kits to get the one that you want. You know, the common thought is that they're all the same, which they're not all the same. They're just as varied as any German armored vehicle. You can tell exactly where a particular one was made by looking at what's on it. You know when it's made by looking at what's on it, that sort of thing. They're not just all green bricks. So I've been having fun with that. Hopefully I can get some more work done on it this weekend and start progressing to working on the hull. The hull takes a little bit of work to make a Lima tank, especially one of the vintages that I'm doing. It has like a rain gutter. They call it a rain gutter in the back behind the rear plate. I wasn't going to recontour the driver's hoods, but Fabio Sacchi was like, you got to recontour those driver hoods. So if he says I should do it, I'm not going to tell the best Sherman modeler on the planet, no, I'm not going to do that. So yeah, I actually reached out to him today, was asking him some questions about how he did his. Super nice guy. First time I really talked to him one-on-one other than comments on Facebook posts and all that stuff. But that's pretty much what I got going on.
Nice. How's your new cat?
Yeah, kind of forget how energetic kittens are. Because I don't know if we talked about that. I think the last time we recorded, we talked about it. I got a new kitten after we lost our elderly cat Ace. My wife wanted to get a new kitten, so we did. And he's pretty awesome. His name is Milo. He's gray and he's got a little white bib and socks and gloves on, little white socks and gloves on. He's 9 weeks old as of this recording. And he's like a little ball of energy. We haven't had a kitten in our house in 5 years, almost 6 years. And yeah, they're fun. He sleeps in our room for now. I think maybe this weekend we kind of let him have what I call supervised visitation with the other cats in the house, and they're warming up to him. But he spends most of his time in my wife and I's room. That's where he sleeps at night, and normally curled up in between my legs or up in like my armpit, and where he'll climb under the covers and snuggle with my wife for a little while. It's pretty adorable.
That's cool. They have 2 speeds, right? Go and sleep.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, and they eat a lot. They eat a lot, which is cool. That is, yeah, they're either, that's what like trying to explain to especially my younger daughter, when he doesn't want to snuggle right now. I'm like, give him 10 minutes. He'll tire himself out and then he'll want to sleep. And then he'll just go back to, being a kitten.
That's awesome. The pictures of him are really, really cute. It's a good looking cat. Let's go over to the left coast and talk to Mr. Mayberry. Grant, what have you been up to?
Not much. I mean, I've been working on a couple things for a couple shows coming up. One of them, your show, Colorado and Utah. Sorry. And I've been printing a lot lately. A lot of 3D printing. I think I'm the biggest spender on my mini factory this week. I don't know what happened to me. I just kind of went a little crazy. So I got a whole bunch of stuff off of them. I'm working. I was in a show last week down in San Diego. Nice little show. I ended up picking a RMF breacher, M1 assault breacher vehicle, basically the M1 without a gun on it, has a MIC-LIC on the back and all that kind of stuff, and a Kodiak from Border. I started working on the breaching vehicle, which was actually, it's a lot of parts, but it's actually, I'm really surprised. My second RMF kit, and I really like it. It's been fun. It's really nice quality. Fit is really good. so far. I've really enjoyed it. It's been a nice little relaxing thing to work on. I finished up a group build, which we'll talk about group builds here in a little bit, yesterday with Doug and a couple other people over on Rick Lawler's site, and that was fun. But other than that, I've been kind of quiet.
Going for the patron of the month on the 3D printing site, right?
I don't know what's. I was just like, oh, I need that. Oh, I need that. Oh, I need that. So it's been crazy.
I saw a wild YouTube video, speaking of your vehicle you're working on, of a vehicle that served in the Falklands. It's a Centurion chassis, and they call it a BARV. Basically, it was the tank they dropped on the beach to, help pull the other vehicles out if they got stuck. Pretty wild looking machine. I'd never seen that before. So
that's cool. That sounds like a neat video. Yeah, I saw some really kind of interesting pictures of some Kodiaks that the Germans were using, and they were winter camouflaged up, and they really kind of with the excavator arm on them, covered in mud. So just really interesting. So we'll see.
Pretty hot down there.
Yeah, it's in the high 80s, low 90s, which is not bad. But this time of year, we're used to June gloom. But I hear it's pretty hot up there where you're at. So I'm not going to complain.
We found summer today, I'm pretty sure. So, yeah. Doug, what have you been up to? What's been going on your bench?
Speaking of weather and hot, I was working in the yard right before we started recording. So, yes, it's hot. But let's see. I finally got primer on that ME 109, the Tamiya 48 scale 109. Digging that kit. I maybe have a few problems with the build itself, but I was kind of itching to get to the paint. So I'm using the new AK lacquers. I got the real color, the Luftwaffe fighter colors 4-pack, and I'm using those, and I'm really happy with them so far. I did start that orc bust that I'm working on with Grant and Rick and a few other guys. That's been a blast. I don't do figures, and I'm learning a lot as I do. I've been watching some videos. I've been playing around with stuff. I even got a chance to use my son's. He's got the Too Thin Coats paints, and those things paint like a dream. I've got the AK 3rd gens, and those things work beautifully. I'm super happy with it. I actually started playing with a wet palette even. I've never used one, and I totally dig it. And one night while I was working on that, I kind of hit a stopping point. I didn't feel like it was a good idea to start going any further on that, but I didn't really want to stop painting. So I pulled out a tortoise bust. It's a tortoise minstrel, kind of big. He's about 3 inches tall. He's wearing a cape. He's playing a ukulele. He's got flowers around his neck, and I've been playing around with that, and that's been a lot of fun too. So I'm kind of doing figures right now.
That's really good. Seems like Grant and Rick are wearing off on you a little bit.
Well, it's what I really like. First of all, it's fun to get a little detail like that and play around with things that aren't real and kind of just do what you want with them. But it's also perfectly, it's so easy to take a bunch of paints upstairs, set it on the kitchen table, and watch, a show while I'm working on it. It's a nice little project I can work on and still be upstairs and hang out with my family if I want to.
You said that spraying the new real colors, that they went down really, really smooth, right?
Super smooth. I've only used RLM 76 so far, but I'm stoked with it. I really enjoyed it. Part of that might be the airbrush I used because I finally fixed I've got 2 SOTARs that have been out of commission, and I think I've got them back up and running. But that waits to be seen how well they run. I may have to send them in to have them serviced. But right now, having used that brush really helped a ton.
That's awesome. Well, save the best for last, JB, right? What's going on in Colorado? What's been going on your bench?
Oh, I don't know about that, Scott, but the bench has been a little quiet lately. I've made some progress on the M1340 for the SMC build. I reprinted some interior components. I got to run down and grab them off the printer, but I should be rocking and rolling on that this weekend. Plan on heading up to Mark and Jamie's for the kickoff of the AMPS Colorado chapter in the north. So for those in Colorado, this have already been dropped by the time the meeting happens. But, Mark Bradley and his wife have started the Northern Colorado AMPS chapter, and super excited to head up there tomorrow with a few familiar faces and eat some barbecue and scrape some plastic. Outside the M1340, I've spent most of my time in the garage on a wind tunnel model. I volunteered to repaint it's probably like a 1/6 scale wind tunnel model, weighs about 60 to 70 pounds. It's 3D printed and milled out of stainless steel, and it's our supersonic demonstrator from where I work. So I am repainting it for a corporate function. The greatest tool I've ever bought in my life is an orbital sander. If you don't have one, I recommend you buy one. You don't know you need it until you have it. You can use it everywhere. I'm just going to go around the house sanding because it's awesome. It's hooked up to an air compressor, and the thing goes at like 1,000 RPMs. It's glorious. But outside of that, to be honest, most of my hobby connection, and I should say inspiration, has really come from two things since the last time we dropped an episode. One, coincidentally, is today, June the 6th, which is the 80th anniversary of D-Day, and seeing all of the content, past and present, whether it's from the days of the battle to people's visits to what's the festivities are going on today. Oh man, it just gets me jazzed. We were talking about it today in a group chat, and TJ's like, I just want to be home and building a model. I'm like, same, because you see all these things and it's super inspiring. And, listeners, there's a group of us. It's getting larger and larger, I think. We plan on visiting Normandy next year. If you're interested, feel free to reach out, but there's going to be a posse excursion to the Continent Peninsula, and we are going to be hitting all the 5 beaches, going to some more, and ending at World Model Expo. And certainly today and throughout the last week, it's just been so inspirational and so friggin' cool. I'm just excited about D-Day, and I can't wait to go back. The next topic I'll mention, I said 2, and I'm sure TJ shares the same sentiment on this one, is KMK. Tracy Hancock, I think he might have been the only American there. But that show, despite being one day, what they did before the show around a group of them meeting in their clubhouse and displaying work, very reminiscent, reminded me a lot of us before shows, sitting around the show before the show for that matter, and just seeing the camaraderie on display there, truly international. The folks from the Four Corners made it over. Just, again, amazing. And the only problem is now I got to add it to my list. So I guess we're going to June next year, TJ.
Yeah, I had severe FOMO that whole weekend. It's a one-day show. It's on a Sunday. But the blue shirts that host it, they open it up Friday as like a social event. And I was talking to Tracy about it afterwards, and I told him what you and I had said, JB, about how I'll just go ahead and say it. American shows are transactional. They are. That's what people care about, is going and buying stuff, getting their little trophies and going home. I mean, it is what it is. That's the way it is. I've been to enough IPMS Nats. That's what it is. It's not a social event unless you make it one. The organization doesn't strive to make it one. At KMK, the hosts strive to make it that way. That's part of the appeal. It's not just, oh, we're going to have a model show. It's let's actually celebrate this hobby. And I guess it's kind of pretentious to say. I don't care. It's the way it is. I mean, we've all been to enough shows in this. Out of all of us, we all know how it is. I'm not saying that American shows are bad. I enjoy shows that I go to here. Obviously, I live here. I love it. It's just different, and that kind of energy, it seems. And it's kind of how I felt at SMC last year, and I'm sure JB can kind of agree with some of that. It's more than just a show, right? It's more than just judging my stuff. That happens, obviously, but yeah, go. I was jealous. I was so jealous. And then I have Dan Sankey texting me too, and we're talking about the Whipping On building, and he's like, you got to come here next year. I'm like, yeah, okay. I know I do. Thank you for reminding me.
Yeah, it's awesome. You mentioned about American shows. I will say another item that was inspirational, and specifically an American show where I think you get a flavor of that camaraderie, is Wonderfest. From the pictures I saw and what those folks do before the show, after the show, during the show, their Iron Modeler little engagement where a group of them basically get in a room and blast through parts to build something within, I think, 24 or 48 hours. But that type of show is so unique, and the social aspect of it, is just really heavy as well. Very reminiscent of KMK in that matter. Is like you have super passionate individuals, showing up days before the show, and it's their pilgrimage. It's their yearly. Who needs a family vacation? It really is, I guess, their family vacation when you think about it. And I think what I'll turn it around. I think that's what you're trying to build, Scott, in Salt Lake. I think I'm still pissed that you decided to hold it on the one weekend of the summer that I'm going to be out of the friggin' country. Getting back to the point, though, Scott, what I think Scott's trying to create in Utah is exactly what some people have already going. And it's just that family aspect, the culture, the celebration, and just bottom line camaraderie. And I'm super looking forward to next year. And Scott, you got some amazing folks. You got Dews, you got Jake, you got a bunch of people flying in, James as well. That, these are names that we talk about, see online. And for them to come to your show, I think it just shows that culture that this show's going to breed. Yeah,
there's no doubt about it. I'm just been really humbled by people coming, because of some logistic issues that we had. We decided to go ahead, but kind of on a short notice to get this show going, get it rolling. It's been a little bit tough, and it's been really, really rewarding to see people support it. But yeah, going back to what you were saying and what TJ was saying, the MMSI show is something I won't get into that. People have heard me go on and on about that, but there's a little bit of that same kind of culture there. And that's really been kind of a blueprint for me. And, what we want to do is bring something to the West out here that is kind of reminiscent of the MMSI and MFCA shows. Haven't been to the MFCA show yet, but a lot of the same people go. So yeah, I think that's it. And then of course the posse. I mean, we go up to Seattle, which is a display only show, and really it's all about, I think TJ said it best, making it a social event, making it less transactional. That Seattle show, no vendors, no contests, but yet it's still a really, really great time. And, trying to set, put that culture and put a product that's just a little bit different. We're not bashing on anybody else, but, just bring in the feel of that cultural event to it, and, emphasizing the social aspects a lot more than maybe some of the traditional, American model show features, which are fine too. So,
yeah, I want to reiterate that transactional is not necessarily a negative. I love spending money, and transactional in the way like going to a hobby show and spending money and finding good deals and interesting things. There's nothing wrong with that. I dig that big time. Anyone that knows me knows that I love spending money on the that I love. Just so we're clear, I'm not saying one thing is better than the other. I don't want to hate mail about it. That's actually not true. I will. You know what? I'll go on record. I think European shows are better. Sorry, I just do. Personal opinion. Feel free to disagree with me. That's okay.
I agree. When I lived in Germany, I would go to specials. I would go to a couple of the shows over there. I made it to KMK up in Poland. I made it to a couple other ones long time ago, but they were still more of a family orientated, I guess, more friend orientated, I guess is a good word for it. So it was rent, and I've never went to a show until then where people would come up to you and say, "Hey, what are you working on?" And first of all, I had to say I'm English, and then they translate it for me. But it was that kind of shows were great, and there is some shows like we've all talked about in America that are kind of shifting. I think Wonderfest is a great example, John. That show is a mecca for sci-fi guys. That's their show. I think some of the gaming shows are the same way. Adepticon, and stuff like that are almost there, I guess I would say. But it's nice to see that atmosphere where people enjoy being around them, where the show is one day, but they'll be there for 4. So that's to me, that's really interesting and really something that I really enjoy about the show process. Don't get me wrong, I'll go to a one-day show wherever, but sometimes it's just it's nice to have that more camaraderie, more fun to be there.
You want to wrap it up, JB?
Oh, I didn't realize I was rapping. Yeah, that was everywhere. Okay. Well, listeners, I think we jumped in hot and heavy around a passionate topic, but hey, let us know. Actually, let us know what your favorite event is for scale modeling. let us know. Write in, post on Facebook, tell us what the best show is you've been to. Maybe we've been to it, and if we haven't, we're going to add it to our list to attend. With that, Scott, I'll kick it back to you.
Yeah, that sounds good. As far as what I've been doing, I've been working on my show pretty much. I did start a Tamiya Comet, and it's been really good so far. It's a little bit basic. It needs a little bit of love to really bring it up to snuff. But as far as the build goes, it's your typical new Tamiya. Really great. I also got out my Das Werk howitzer kit, the M1918. I'm working on a modernized World War II version of it and trying to get that one rolling as well. So worked on those, but life's been a little bit crazy. Had to replace a TV, and the show's just obviously taking a lot of time. So anyway, that's kind of what I've been working on. Well, let me turn it over to TJ, and he'll talk about models from the Plastic Posse group we like.
All right. Yeah. So our normal segment, we get to cruise through the Plastic Posse group and find stuff that we like. And since you are making me go first, I will give you mine first. And I'm choosing Eric Kane's A4 Skyhawk. I don't know what version it is. M maybe. I don't know. I don't know that much about scooters other than they look cool. And we're in a group shot with Eric. Eric's super cool. He's local to JB. Super nice guy. Really good modeler. So we've just kind of seen some of the behind the scenes as he's been progressing, and he just dropped the finished photos not too long ago. I think he's going to build a base for it, so I guess it's not like done, but the model itself is done, and it looks super sharp.
Yeah, I agree. I really like how he augmented the markings on the tail, and it just looks really, really sharp. He did a great job. All right. I guess I'll go next. I'm going to do Andrea Rodriguez. She was on our podcast before. It was a great interview. If you haven't heard that, you can go back in the back catalog and check that out. But she goes by the handle Modest Modeler, and she did a bunch of German, I think they're Wehrmacht soldier figures in 1/72 scale, and did a really good job. I mean, 72nd scale figures are really small, and I was just really impressed with the layering and some of the depth and shadows that she was able to get on those figures. I don't know if you guys saw those.
They're really nice.
Oh yeah,
I mean, she's awesome. Yeah,
her work is legit.
Yeah, really good.
It was funny. She had another post later in the week, and she posted, "Oh yeah, I forgot I entered." She entered an online contest in Europe, and she completely forgot about it. And they sent her a message. "Oh, by the way, you won a third place and also a best of. So FYI." But she could kind of even forgotten she'd entered that contest. So all right, let's kick it on over to JB. JB, what did you see that you liked?
Yeah, Scott, I'll have to call out Patrick Nyquist. Love his P51. Natural metal looks great. He did a ton of detail work on those drop tanks, whether it's, the painting itself or the decals. They just look really crisp, and his work is really tight. And then also want to give a shout out to his wife. I thought the fingernails were pretty sweet in the homage to D-Day with the invasion stripe. So all around, really cool, Patrick. Hopefully we get to meet in person one day.
All right. I think that's a first for this segment, the nails thing. Doug, what did you see on the group that you liked?
Well, I'm gonna be a little bit maybe selfish here. I printed some 3D printed some turtles, a series of turtles, the Turtle Merchant, and I gave one to Martin Drayton, and he has posted what he's done with it so far. It's almost done. And it's a lot of fun. This thing's so ridiculous. It's a turtle standing upright, wearing a pot for a hat, for a helmet. He's got a lantern and all kinds of stuff strapped to his back. And it's ridiculous and it's fun. And Martin painted it with apple barrel paints. So it's not even very, it's not using the best paints in the world, but what he's managed to do with it is just fun. Kind of inspires me to maybe want to do one of these next. So that's what I saw. That's what I want to shout out today.
That's pretty cool. Grant, what about you?
I'm going to call out Keith Hay. Did a Hobby Boss AAA 7P 7- or 7A1, which is the big marine landing craft, LVT, LTD, whatever it is. He's working on the interior of it, which the thing is huge. First of all, if you haven't seen the kit itself, it's a massive kit. It's a full interior hobby boss kit, 1/35th scale. Not an easy kit, especially the interior. He's really nailing the colors of it. He's got extra gear all over the place, like it's lived in. So he's doing a great job. But that's the one I want to call out.
PJ, did you want to go over something?
I did. I forgot to mention something when you asked me how I was doing. I need to give a huge shout out to our buddy JC Osborne. It's about a week ago. He messaged me and was like, "Hey, I have some stuff that I don't want anymore. Would you be interested in it?" And I said, "Sure. I mean, not a problem." So he's like, "I'll send you a box." And I got it yesterday, and it is a box full of aftermarket Sherman stuff, a lot of Tiger Model Design stuff. I can build a full M4 Baldwin production vehicle with all the stuff that he gave me for free. I asked if he wanted anything. He said, "Nope. It's in better hands if I give it to you." I think he's kind of moving away from 35th scale, and I was happy to take it off his hands. And it was just an awesome gesture from a really good dude that I really appreciate. It's pretty sweet. And plus, Baldwin M4s are cool. I have one. Ken gave it to me. I have his that he built that we talk about later. So I like that particular version of the M4. So yeah, thanks, man. Thanks, JC. That was super, super cool. And I'm pretty fortunate to have the friends that I do.
He is a capital guy, and you guys have heard the story. "Hey, Scott, I've got a couple bottles of MRP. Do you want some?" I mean, beware when he offers you gifts. He's just a generous guy. Really, really awesome job. So way to go, JC. That's incredible. I also want to do a quick shout out. Chris Meddings has got a new podcast out called The Model Philosopher, and his second episode was entitled Competition, and it's a discussion that he does with Marin Van Gils, and I thought it was an excellent podcast. So great job to Chris and Marin, but it's really terrific to hear the thoughts of Marin and how he approaches judging and kind of what he thinks about it across formats. They talk about, IPMS, they talk about amps, they talk about open system. It's just a really, really interesting discussion, and I really enjoyed it. So if you are interested, it's called The Model Philosopher. You can find it pretty much anywhere. Go check it out.
The Plastic Posse podcast is sponsored by Tankcraft. In addition to their awesome cutting mats, Tankcraft also makes some incredible scale modeling tools for your workbench. Want to keep extra thin cement off your bench and in the bottle where it belongs? Check out Tankcraft Glue Base, designed to stop glue spills in their tracks. The glue base is made from solid milled aluminum and comes with a stable rubber base pad and can accommodate most square and round cement bottles. And while you're there, check out their line of cutting mats and other unique modeling tools. Remember, Posse listeners get 15% off their first order by using the code POSSE15. So head on over to tankcraft.com. That's TANKRAFT.com.
John, what's going on with the Scale Prospector?
We're nearing issue 3. And it'll be dropped probably within the month of June after I get back from a little vacation. But we're going to have some external contributors, some work from TJ and myself, Scott. Grant's going to have a historical article on the KV2. So it's going to be another jam-packed issue. Definitely going to have pictures from Vegas and a few other places we've been. Scott took a trip up to Wyoming and basically saw every American armored vehicle ever made. So I'm sure we'll do a spotlight on that. But overall, issue's coming together really well. Looking to push it out by the end of the month. And yeah, super excited. Again, let us know your thoughts. This is for our Patreons. So you'll see it posted there in PDF form. So let us know if you like it, love it, hate it.
Thanks, JB. All right. Well, let's do our first discussion point. I'm going to talk about something that I'm sure everybody out there listening has an opinion on, and hopefully you guys do too. But group builds, it's kind of the question I have for you guys is, are they a good thing or a bad thing? With some people, it seems like group builds really get people motivated and, they can get people's mojo jump started if you've been in a little bit of a funk. And if you're like me, sometimes they can just kind of make an overwhelming situation get even more overwhelming. And so, kind of for me, I've kind of decided that just, at least for now, I'm going to put all the group builds on pause and, just kind of focus on what's on my bench. But for me, it's kind of, I don't want to say that they're negative. It's just, a whole bunch of commitments tend to kind of pile up. And on top of each other. And for me, they kind of tend to kind of weigh me down more than they do motivate me. But I'm interested in kind of where you guys are at on this. So maybe start with John. John, how do you feel about group builds?
I'm hit and miss. I'd like to say I'm batting maybe 500 for group builds. I love to sign up for them, but my commitment, the execution and delivery is always questionable. I think I'm 1 for 1 this year already with the Bradley, so that's good. I don't know if I'm going to finish the D-Day build because I'll just blame Jackson on the on the Weasel for that matter. But no, I guess I'm a little bit indifferent. What I've learned is I enjoy group builds with a small group. Larger group builds, they're cool, but I tend to think the fun group builds are one where it's like just a couple of us. Like, hey, you want to build this kit? Hey, you want to build this subject matter? Like the Bradley, a useless excuse for a group of half dozen of us to jump in and build it. And what was cool is some people picked it up on Facebook and built along. So I think for me, group builds are always well intentioned. It's just unfortunately my delivery is questionable sometimes. And like you said, Scott, competing priorities. And I think group builds are fun with your close friends, or if there's a major display that you want to be a part of. I guess it's, different strokes for different folks. What I've come to realize is time is limited. And for me, group builds I'll just repeat myself a third time, with close friends are the most fun.
Well, the road to hell is paved in good intentions. So that's I'm similar to JB.
Amen.
I like being a part of it. I love inside jokes. Hopefully I can be a part of one sometime. And I used to be better about it, but I don't finish as much as I used to. I just don't care as much. I'd rather take the time and make something really freaking good than make something that I know I could do better. So yeah, that's why as the years have gone by, I think his modeling's gotten better, but output's gotten less. And I don't even think I have not anything. I'm over whatever I've signed up for this year. I mean, I guess I technically built the Bradley. It was built.
You got the Mooseroo done.
Yeah. God. Yeah, I did. I forgot it. That's how much I hated that. I don't even want to think about it. Actually, it doesn't look that bad. Truth be told, it's okay for what it is, which is a flaming piece of shit. But yeah, I mean, like JB, I love buddy builds. Like the one I did with Ian last year are 2 Wild and Crazy Cats builds that we're doing, part 2 this year with not Tigers, Panthers, which I'm all ready to go. I have everything. It's ready. We were just talking about it, I think yesterday, that we have to do it. We need to do it, but I need to focus on the build I'm working on now, which is also kind of a little bit of a buddy build between me and JB and Jensen and Jeff, who is working on his SMC build. Like it's kind of a group build. Not really. We're just pushing each other to finish this, a particular project for the show in October. Yeah. I love group builds. I like hosting them. I feel like I do a pretty good job. I think the ones we've hosted have been successful. I've built something for the Overlord group build, but since I'm not going to Nats, I don't know if I'll finish it. It's ready to get painted. Yeah, they're hit and miss for me too. I just don't like them as much as I used to.
Yeah, one of the kits that's close for me that I'm hoping to get done this summer is my Tamiya Spitfire, which was from our group build from like what, guys? 2 years ago, maybe the Spitfire group build that we did, or that was like 3 years ago?
That was like at least 3 years ago. At least.
Yeah, no, I'm not very good at getting those done either. But yeah, like I think I like how John put it, that they're always well intentioned, but especially if you start, I think when you start getting hit with multiple group builds, TJ, you had Mooseroo, but you also had buddy builds and group builds going on at the same time. That's for me where I can start drowning really, really quickly.
Well, yeah, it's easy to say yes.
Yeah, exactly.
It requires nothing other than be like, oh, that's a great idea. Like you don't like, it's not like you have to put any effort into agreeing to do something that no one will hold you to. Like what happens if you don't do it? Nothing. So it's not like there's no accountability there. So who cares? So yeah, again, like JB, sure, I'll do that. That sounds great. It's one of my favorite things to say and then just not follow up on it.
I was just going to say the bomber group build is a great example. It is super casual where I don't know if I'll finish it, but I have good intentions to at least start the ICM B26, and it's just throwing it out to the group. Hey, you want to build bombers? Come on. Am I going to get to it anytime soon? No. But my intention is to build a bomber before the end of the year. And if someone wants to build something, I don't care, any scale, whatever, I'm going to build a bomber. You can build whatever you want. And you can be part of the group or, the bomber buddy build at the Blastic Bossy podcast. So that's back to you, Scott.
A lot of bees. A lot of bees.
So many bees.
Doug, what about you? Where do you stand on group builds, buddy builds?
Buddy builds are great. Buddy builds usually are just a couple of people, and like was mentioned before, the smaller the group, the better. I tend to struggle in the large groups. Part of it is I'll agree, kind of FOMO thing. Somebody says, "Hey, who wants to do this?" And I jump in because I'm like, that sounds like fun, and it'll be part of this group. And then I realize maybe it's a subject that isn't my favorite. It's and that's fine. I build things that aren't necessarily the top of my list, and sometimes I learn to love the things. Look at armor. That T-3485 was our first group build with the posse. That was 3 years ago, and I've built a bunch of armor since then. But little groups are great. I built this working on this orc with Grant and Rick, and that's a lot of fun. It's not really a build. It's more of a, just a paint job. But that's some of my favorite things to do is the painting. I did with Grant and Rick, we did the A-Wing build. I've done a few other little things that are a lot of fun. I think the biggest problem I have is when the build requires a lot of work, that kind of takes some of the fun out of it. I mean, if it's going to be a 50-hour build total, that might be too much for me to give to a group build. If I'm going to do that, it's going to be something that I really, really want to build.
Yeah, I can see that. Grant, what do you think?
I just can't. I agree with what everybody else said. I think Doug brought up a good point for myself also, is that it depends on the complexity of the kit. I'm like everybody else and say, let's do a build. And then you get the build and you're like, oh my God, this is going to take forever. Or it's going to take a lot out of me or a lot of time. I think that'll, hurt me personally. It's harder for me to get more motivated, but when it's smaller and it's a smaller group of people and, you're talking back and forth, you're showing pictures and stuff, I think it's good. There's been some really, really good group builds. And now the Machining Krieger build we did for Texas was a blast. That was so much fun. It's just seeing what the people did and what came out of that group build, and the support everybody gave in that group build was fantastic. That was, to me, that was probably the best group build I've ever been in. Again, smaller kids, but you see, like I said, you see what other people do. I'm like the rest. I say I'll do it. I'm probably maybe 50% right now. There's a lot of groups builds I signed up for that I just completely fumbled out, but there's some I've completed. So overall, I think they're good. I just think for me, I just have to watch what I do and how the complexity of the kit, like I said earlier, and and the time frame. Is it an open time frame? Do we have 2 weeks? Do we have a month? What is it? If we're on a tight deadline and it's a complex kit, I can't finish it. I mean, I just got life. Everybody's got life going on. Travel for work or whatever it is, and sometimes you just can't. So if it's an open build, group build, and it's got time and there's no deadline on it, that's fun. I'd love to do that. But, when you say, I need you to build a whatever in 2 weeks and we're going to post it, then that's when I get in trouble.
It's funny you bring that up. I actually kind of like the 48 and 48.
Yeah.
I almost always get those done, those short time builds where you just have to kind of allocate some of your time. I'm going to be better at that than a long-term project that kind of is going to compete for my time over the next few months, because inevitably you're going to have other interests and probably other buddy builds that kind of pop up. So I actually like those more short-term, get them done kind of buddy builds than, and maybe that goes along with what Doug was saying, which is, in a 48-hour project, you can't get all crazy with it, right? No. You gotta prioritize it, what you're doing.
I think also we're picking kits that are not, we're looking at this as kits that are not too difficult, do not require, unless you're some people that want to do Zimmer it on a vehicle in 48 hours. But, that's a great point, Scott. That really is. The 48 and 48 has always been a fantastic group build for us. I mean, I think all of us have been very successful with that group build. I can remember TJ's Tiger, the 148 scale Tiger, not the vehicle, the Russian vehicle, and JB stuff, and and your stuff, Scott, and Doug's stuff and Jensen's stuff. I mean, it was fantastic, and you got a point. Maybe if you don't have to do too much, and you have a dedicated time like that, that's not a bad thing. I personally, I don't see that as more. I see that more as not really a buddy build, though. I see that more as it's just something else we do. But it's a good point. I mean, maybe that focus like that is good.
Well, that kind of goes to what I was going to say. Like, I like a buddy build with a point, right? Like the one that Ian and I did last year, our buddy build where we built the Wildcats, that was intentional. It was, Ian's primarily an armor modeler. I'm primarily an armor modeler, and we were both over numerous adult beverages. We're like, look, man, let's push ourselves and build some stuff that we don't normally do. We both happen to have this kit. So like, dude, let's build this kit. Let's push ourselves to do something we don't really do. We'll do it together, and it was really successful. I enjoyed it. I loved that. Building that Wildcat got me into wanting to build more airplanes. And now I enjoy doing that. Still not my favorite thing in the world, but I like it. They're cool. I love that model. It's one of my favorite models that I've done. And the same thing, like when we agreed to do what we're going to do this year, which is Panthers, and we picked a good kit. And the deal is we do the same scheme, the same vehicle, and it keeps us focused. You can do whatever you want. You can, put whatever aftermarket you want into it. I think we have matching aftermarket this year. It's just a tax Zimmerit and a metal barrel. And then I'm going to print tracks. I think he's going to print tracks too. Like that's pretty much it. So it's kind of focused. And, he's like a Russian armor modeler specifically. I'm a, Western Allied armor modeler. So we're like, let's build something that we don't really do let's try to be JB and build something in German tritone. So that is inspiring to me, because that's the kind of stuff where like, oh, that subject sounds cool. Let's build that. Like, yeah, that's fun. But I'm just like any other modeler. I lose interest sometimes fast. Like sometimes like between putting the first 5 parts together and I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of over this. I don't want to do this anymore. And I'm, Andy throwing the Woody doll. I don't want to play with you anymore. Like that's me with like every kit that I work on.
Yeah. I think on the flip side of this, because I think a lot of us have been maybe talking about some of the challenges that come when we did the AK build for the FJs. That really pulled me out of a slump, and I struggled in a couple spaces on that build. But when I got over the hump, I really had kind of a burst of energy at the bench after that. So I don't know. Do you guys find some positive motivation in group builds?
I do. I mean, the facade group was the same thing for me. When we decided to do the facade group build, that was something totally different than I've ever done. I was in a slump at that time, and I was not doing very much. I was and then I looked at what JB did over the weekend up in the desert with just the colors and the brush. And I was like, oh, I can do that. So I just jumped on that. That was a positive for me. Yeah, there is positives. Again, the 48-hour build, like you talked about earlier, Scott, that's always a positive for me. You sit there and you look at what you can do in 48 hours, and you're like, oh God, I can do this. I'm holding myself back kind of stuff. And there's definitely a positive to it. I mean, I'm sure everybody will agree with that. And, but it's, you do that. And I think group buddy builds like that are really cool for when you're in a slump, and it's really good for you to, reach out and do that kind of stuff. So, that's what I think. Yeah,
without a doubt. It can get you pumped if you're doing the subject you like and you're with a group of people you like, or you're knocking something out. Let's talk about the 48 and 48 again. Now, I think some of my best work has been done in 48 hours. And part of the reason I think that is because I look at it and I know exactly what it was and how much time I was supposed to take. And I knew there had to be corners cut. And I've seen a lot of guys that go into those 48 and 48s and they build stuff that's so much better than mine. Of course, they finish it 2 months after they start it because they don't, they bite off more than they can chew. But when I go into that, I have it. I mean, I get off work a little early on Friday and I've got my whole weekend scheduled out. and I know what I'm going to build, and I know the steps I need to take and what I need to do. And when I can actually accomplish that, it really leaves me feeling good. And then just the 48 and 48 that we do with the Models for Heroes, that is just an unbelievably great organization, what they do. And you can't help but leave that weekend feeling good about it.
Yeah, I guess that goes back to what TJ said, right? It should have a point. And I think that really checks that box. JB, what do you think? Positive impetus from group build sometimes, if there is something good behind it, or?
Oh, yeah. I mean, 48 and 48 is a great example. This year, I picked a kit that I didn't finish in that amount of time, and I regret that. I think I'll just level set on what can I get done in 48 hours. And when 48 hours is over, I'm done. And that group build is that group build. And, you know, going back to the FJ and facades, those were great group builds because they were way out of my comfort zone. The FJ was a soft skin yellow banana that I don't ever build. And then the facade was just such a unique subject. And I built both of them because I had so much fun. And I have another one primed, ready to go because of it. So definitely there's positivity around, you know, there's that P word we love, just like feedback. But those are good group builds. And I'm just echoing what everybody else is saying.
Awesome. Well, listeners, where do you stand on this? Are group builds good things? Are they bad things? Does it just kind of depend on the day or the subject? Send us your feedback. Maybe if you've got a group build that turned out really, really good, maybe share that with us on the Posse group. That would be awesome. All right. Well, let me kick it over to TJ to talk about upcoming model shows and events.
Alrighty, so I'm going to start with our buddy JC Osborne letting us know that June 22nd from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. in Oxnard, California, they will be hosting WonderCon 2024, and that is presented by IPMS Region 8 10 Wonders. This event will be held at the Murphy Auto Museum, and entrance to the museum and contest is $10. For more details, head over to the Ventura County IPMS page on Facebook. September 21st is the IPMS Reno High Rollers annual show. For more details, check out IPMS Reno High Rollers on Facebook or message Cody Kaczynski. On September 27th and 28th, the Central Arkansas Scale Modelers will be hosting RockCon, which is formerly known as Sprue Do. This show will serve as the 2024 Region 6 IPMS Regional Contest. That's nice. You don't see regionals very often. Friday the 27th, there will be classes from 8 till 5 by Jim Bryce, Wes Salzar, and others. Saturday the 28th contest doors will open at 8 a.m. and wrap up around 4. They utilize the gold, silver, bronze system, and there will be plenty of great vendors on site. Look for more information at their Facebook page, the Central Arkansas Scale Modelers, or their website, casmodels.org. We talk about that with Ken Childres later on in this episode too. And we have the 15th anniversary of Scale Model Challenge, which is held in Eindhoven, Netherlands on October 19th and 20th, 2024. More information is over on their website, www.scalemodelchallenge.com. JB Jensen, myself will be there. So if you can make it, please come. It's amazing. The annual MMSI show will be held on October 18th and 19th at the Schaumburg Marriott in Schaumburg, Illinois. For more information, you can check out their website at Military Miniature Society of Illinois, dashes in between all of those, about the show. From our friends down under, they have Scale ACT 24, which is Australia's friendliest scale model show. It will be held November 9th and 10th at the Thoroughbred Park in Lineham, ACT, Canberra. And modelers can enter their models in the competition or select display only. We will have a segment on this show with Peter Davis, the president of ACT SMS, coming up soon. And for those of you into advanced planning, Winter Blitz 2025 will be held on Saturday, January 25th, 2025. Kind of far out there. Put it on your calendars, though. And that will be at the Museum of the American GI at College Station, Texas.
All right. And also wanted to remind everybody one last time, June 22nd from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. over here in Salt Lake City, Utah, the first annual Rocky Mountain Expo. You can check out all the details on our website, which is Rocky Mountain MTN hobbyexpo.com, or you can also find us on Facebook under Rocky Mountain Hobby Expo. Still have some vendor tables left. In addition to the show, we're going to have some great things going on. We're going to do hangar tours. It's being held at the Utah National Guard Aviation facility. So they're going to be doing tours. You can see Apaches and Blackhawks up close. And we're also going to have live demos with Rick Lawler using AK Interactive products. And Grant Mayberry, Martin Drayton, and Jake McGee are all going to be doing seminars as well. It's going to be really cool. Also, Barry Biediger is going to be bringing one of Shep Payne's shadow boxes. It's called A King of Shreds and Patches to display at the show. So you can see a piece of modeling history there. That's really, really cool. And I think he's going to have some other boxes there as well that he and Joan have done. And I'm looking forward to seeing those. And we just added another title sponsor. MRS Hobbies here in Salt Lake City is now going to be a title sponsor as well. So it's going to be a great day. We're really looking forward to it. If you can, we'd love to see you there. Going to be a lot of people there. I think JB mentioned earlier, Matt McDougall's coming in from Texas, Jake McGee. We've got, Cody Kaczynski's coming from Sacramento, Jeremy Elliott coming down from Idaho, Mark and Jamie coming over from Colorado. Derek Post is going to be there. It's going to be great. A lot of people coming in for it. I think we're going to have an absolute blast. So anyway, hope to see you there. If you are coming in from out of town, make sure you buzz me. We're going to do kind of a pre-show sojourn up to Hill Air Force Base. They just added a new hangar at the museum, and they brought in an F-22 Raptor and a U-2 to add to their collection. So we're going to all go up and check those new aircraft out. All right, let's kick it over to Doug for some feedback.
Feedback. All right. I'm going to start with Raphael Shelton. Greetings, Posse. I just finished episode 94 and had some thoughts to share. He says, we discussed Adam Savage's video about negative emotions in episode 68. In the video, he talks about the benefit of cleaning up every day. Adam covers this in great detail and every tool a hammer. I got a lot out of that book, most of which I have yet to really put into practice, sadly. All right. John Bryan, he says, another post on a great discussion on workbench cleaning. I am fortunate to have dedicated a dedicated room for modeling, but it's pretty small. This is the entirety of my workbench. He actually shared a picture of it. He uses it for construction, all painting and in progress and final photography. That means I have to clean enough to switch between these phases simply to do the next thing, which is a useful constraint I'd never thought about before. I'd always been jealous of people who had oodles of room, but now I can see the silver lining in a more confined space. Craig Flynn says, I just finished listening to the latest episode and especially loved the discussion topic. One thing I have brought from my professional life into scale modeling is the concept of giving my future self a gift. At work, I'll spend the last 10 minutes of the day planning for the next. At the bench, I'll use the last few minutes of a session to gift future Craig a clear bench for the next one. I also do a full clean at the end of each project to give me a mental closure and a fresh slate for the next one. Additionally, my cats love to hang out on the windowsill while I build, so I'm also constantly dealing with hair, which prompts me to clean the bench in the middle of sessions also, a sacrifice I'm willing to make. Finally, Cody Kaczynski says, listen to 94, always an awesome listen when everyone's favorite uncle joins. I found the discussion bizarrely timely as I had taken a 3-day weekend to both clean the bench and organize the stash and pull out the stuff that is to be divested. I have found that over the last 6 months that if the bench isn't at least usable, it deters any desire to sit and do work. Does my bench need to be absolutely clean all the time? Absolutely not. A little discombobulation acts as a reminder that there are projects to return to. Yet there is a critical mass that does occur for all of us when the bench needs cleaning and the stash needs thinning. Sorry. Well, that is what I have for feedback right now. If you want to send your feedback to us, send your emails to plasticpossepodcast@gmail.com or just message us on Facebook.
All right. Thanks, Doug. Well, let's kick it over to TJ to intro our guest interview.
Yeah. So recently, as in 2 nights ago, as of this recording, we sat down with Ken Childres, who's been mentioned multiple times in this episode already. He's an awesome guy. He's a good friend of mine. And we had a really good chat with him about pretty much everything that has to do with the hobby. So please enjoy.
Welcome to the Plastic Posse. Tonight, I'm joined by TJ and JB, and we're going to have a conversation with our buddy Ken Childres. Ken, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing good, man. Thank you for having me.
Been wanting to talk to you for a while. This is going to be great. So we'll just, lately we've been doing kind of more of a conversation and less of a structured interview kind of thing. So I think that's what we'll do. So I'll just start it off. And you recently just got back from Wonderfest where you judged. So tell us a little bit about how that show went.
Man, it was good. This is, I guess, my 10th year, aside from the couple of years that it was shut down, but the 10th time I've been to Wonderfest, and it just grows and grows and grows and grows. It's different than other model shows. There's a couple of guys from Louisiana. Both of them were actually on the Posse Facebook page that I met there that I know. And they were just looking around like, two kids in a candy store. They didn't really know what to think about it, right? They're like, this is a lot different than, your kind of local show. And it's a lot different. It's a different type of people. It's a different kind of genres. Everything's different. But the energy in the room is, a couple of us here were at AMPS Nationals. And this is 1000% the opposite side of that, right? Like there's just the building just vibrates with a buzz of people. We got there on Friday afternoon. We drove over there and it's fairly quick. It seems like it goes fast. We were there for Saturday and then we left about 11 o'clock Sunday morning. I did help judge. This was my first time doing that. I always want the opportunity to look at the way other organizations, I won't say clubs because it's not a club, but other organizations judge. And it was really interesting to get kind of behind the curtain look at the way they do things. Because it's so many models, there were about probably 20 or 25 judges, and we judged 1,100 models in 3.5 hours with teams of 2 and 3 per group.
Say those numbers one more time.
Right. This is for the folks that say it can't be done.
just one more time.
Yeah. There was 1,100 and a little over 1,100 models, and we judged them in about 3.5 to 4 hours with about 25 people. Maybe there may have been a couple others that snuck in there later. Even at 30, it's still completely possible to do a very large show, in a reasonable amount of time and give everything an honest shake because it's an open system. We looked at everything. I don't know how every group did it. I'm confident that everybody gave it an honest swing, but I know our group, when we looked at everything hard, to give everything the benefit of the doubt and to do the modeler right. We didn't just skim over stuff and just, kind of wag the finger at it. We really looked at everything. The judging there is really interesting. It's actually really similar to the way that my local club judges things. We've been doing gold, silver, bronze for a little over a decade now, which is unusual for an IPMS kind of leaning club. But I found that the way Wonderfest does it is really similar to the way they do it. Like in our local club, we kind of look at the way the modeler, what they were going for, right? Instead of judging it based on what I would build their model as, we look at things in how we thought the modeler, what they're trying to do, right? And Wonderfest is even kind of turns it up to 11 because you have different genres, like for instance, anime. You can't judge an anime figure like you would judge an orc. Like they're not the same thing, not even remotely, and the way that they're painted intentionally is not even in the same ballpark. So you really have to think hard about what you're looking at. You can't just go through it and be like, well, that's not how I would do it, so I'm going to give it a whatever, and they encourage you, if you are unfamiliar with something, ask, because there's somebody in the room that is, right? So I know I talked to other people and I saw other people conferring with people to, make sure that they did right by the modeler. So like I told somebody after it was over with, there's not a award that I put down there that I wouldn't have trouble defending, right? I mean, I would look the model right in the eye and tell them why I gave them what they got. Whether they agree is, it is what it is. But, but we really tried to give them an honest shake.
I love that. I love the fact that, as a judge, that you're really concerned, you're treating that modeler like a customer. That's something that, that I believe in really passionately. No matter what system that you're in, you really want to treat the people who bring the models, because without the models, there is no show, right? Before I turn these other two guys loose on you, tell us a little bit, for the people that don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of how you got into modeling and then kind of became more serious about it.
Okay. I don't remember. I kind of envy folks who remember exactly what model they got and exactly what age they were and what store it was and how hot it was that day. I'm not that guy. Like, I don't remember. But I got my first model. I was probably around 7 or 8. I had some family friends that I stayed with when I was a kid. They were an older couple, but I stayed with them for a week or two at a time. They were just family friends. And the lady that was the wife was really into art. Like, she was an artist herself, but she really encouraged it, right? So I was always drawing and painting and doing things. And at some point, I walked into Walmart, picked up a model. So a few years, it was jets and World War II airplanes, because that's all Walmart had. It was Revell monogram testers and Lindbergh every now and then. At one point, I picked up a Lindbergh BMP-1. It was the first armor kit that I've ever seen. And not a spectacular kit, I'll just go right out and say, but it changed the way I looked at model building. The next day, we went back and got the T5455, whatever it was, the companion to it, built that. And then at that time, I was biting the parts off with my teeth. Modeling was fun, right? And that went on for a couple of years. My dad was a Civil War historian, so we spent history was big around my house all the time. And we spent a lot of time in the library. There was a modeler in town, 2 modelers actually, that would put displays every couple of months in the library. And I was looking at these displays, and it was just like black magic, right? There's the paint smooth, there's no brush strokes, there's no seams. The decals look like they haven't been put on with Elmer's glue. I mean, they were fantastic. Dioramas and aircraft, tanks, and all manner of stuff. I learned the guy's name, Jimmy Lockett, but I never knew who he was. I saw it, and I still have it around here hanging up, is a newspaper article that the local paper did about him. So I learned who he was. So I was one of those fortunate modelers that went all through grade school, high school, college, and never stopped building. It slowed down a little bit here and there, but I never really stopped. So I graduated college, and about a year later, I was in Hobby Lobby in Hot Springs where I lived, and there was 2 older gentlemen in there. And I'm not a big extrovert, like I don't, especially not then, but I struck up a conversation with them. And one of the guys introduced himself as Jimmy Lockett. He was the man that I saw his models 10 years prior to that. We struck up a friendship that lasted until he passed away several years later. He introduced me to the local model club, and local was an hour away. Never knew such thing existed, right? So that really opened up a lot of doors, meeting him and him kind of dragging me into the club scene and stuff, which got me into going to shows. And it was after I got out of college that I really decided to take my modeling seriously, right? I used to travel a lot for work, and I would spend those traveling months reading magazine articles. There was a Tamiya model magazine. Y'all might remember this. There was a Hetzer in it that had a 3-tone scheme. This was back in like 2003 or 4. Had a hand-painted Hetzer in it and some other stuff. And this was about the time that Phil Stasinskis article came out, and I would plan builds while I was traveling, and I would come home and I would build. Probably the first serious model that I ever built, armor model, was the Dragon Night Fighting Panther, the old Imperial series one. It was the first time I ever went to a hobby shop, and I bought a better kit to rob parts out of it. I bought the Tamiya kit when it very first came out just to rob the mantlet out of it, which was baffling to me, but it was right. It was cool. So you get done, and I had this model with all different colors and stuff on it, which was the goal, right? Was to have something that had different pieces and aftermarket and all this stuff. It was the first time I ever took a swing at that. And then not long after that, I started the Stu 42 that is still my favorite build ever, with a wounded dude sitting next to it, the knocked out Stu 42. That was in like 2005. That still remains my favorite one. But since then, it's been nonstop. I haven't really stopped building there. I've tried to open my horizons up a little bit since then, but armor is still where the love is, for sure. I don't know if I answered your question, but I tried.
Yeah, perfect.
Good. I've been rehearsing that nonsense for 3 days.
Man, starting with the Imperial series Panther, that brings back a lot of memories. That's mid aughts. And Ken, you bring up the point about Phil Stinkus Panzer IV. I just saw pictures from KMK and they had it on display there.
Yes,
and it still holds up to this day. I mean, 100%. I'm sure you're still inspired by it because I certainly am.
That magazine's in a holder around the corner over here. I still read that article.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, despite being it's almost 20 years old, I bet.
Yeah, it was 2003 or 4, I think. So it may be 20 years old now.
Yeah, exactly. So speaking about, that time frame and getting, starting to get serious in the hobby, I guess a question I have, did you hang out on Missing Links or were you more track link guy? Or where was your online presence back in the days?
Starting out, it was in Missing Links is where I would go to post stuff from time to time. I was actually involved with some of y'all might be familiar with this, maybe not. There was a forum because I really miss forums. I really do. Forums were awesome. There was a forum that I belonged to at the time called the League of Extraordinary Modelers. It was fantastic. I mean, we would do Secret Santas all over the world. People would ship kits back and forth all over the world, and we would do these parties everywhere. It was a fantastic forum. But I would go to post finished builds on Missing Links, but I was scared to because there's all these heavy hitters on there. I was like, I'd just kind of walk over there and just kind of drop it and see what happened, right? But my turnout has always been really low, so it's not like it was a weekly thing. But every 3, 4, 5 months, I would drop something on there, and sometimes would get some feedback. But again, it was so overwhelming the quality of work on there at the time that I was just I would just kind of drop stuff on there and shut my eyes and see what happened. And the cool thing is now there's dudes that were on there that I'm friends with now. 15 or 20 years later. It's funny how that stuff changes over time. You just got to put yourself out there. I was re-listening to y'all's interview with Spud. Sam. Spud and Sam and how they met. And it kind of struck up those kind of memories from back in that time on Missing Links. I did a little bit on Track Link, but not too much. Mostly it was Missing Links.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Back then we didn't have the personal connection. At least I didn't to a lot of the people posting. And I think as we look at social media, that's the one nice thing. We get the personal aspect of it because I think that's how we met. I've followed your work for a long time, known your name, and then having the opportunity just to connect randomly on Facebook, and here we are, BSing in the evening talking about models. So that's right. It's really wild. Ken, one of the things I wanted to bring up, you talk about posting online. You also were a part of Fine Scale. You did some videos for them, right?
I did. It was actually the first time I went to MMSI. Aaron, I've known Aaron for a while. He's an Arkansas guy originally, so we've crossed paths fairly regularly at shows. And one time at Chicago, he pulled me aside and he was like, "Hey, dude, will you do some videos for us?" And I was like, "Look, man, I'm a video producer, editor for a living, for 20 some odd years. I don't want to do it when I get home from work, So, and that's kind of so he kept bugging me, and I was like, okay, fine, I'll do some. So I would do these little short things, but my son was really little at the time. So I had to do these videos at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. So these videos would get punched out and they would sound like Barry White sitting in there talking about models. There's just these gravelly, first half a cup of coffee voice, and I slogged through maybe 10 of them. And finally I told him and Tim, and I was like, I just can't maintain this. Every time y'all ask me, I can't keep it up. But I did do a bunch of them for a while, and they were fun, and I've learned a lot since then. I still maintain, we might as well just go ahead and get it out of the way. I maintain that, Martin's videos are the golds. We're going to invoke Martin's name. We're just going to go ahead and get it out of the way. I still maintain that his videos are the gold standard on how to do it doesn't matter whether you like the way he does things or not. It's just irrelevant. But as far as showing somebody how to do something, there is no other video out there that's better. And of course, this was the ones I was doing for Fine Scale were a few years prior to that. And they're still around. You got to kind of go hunt for them, but they're still around. And there's some entertaining ones on there. I feel like there's some that I probably should have thought harder about before I recorded them, but I didn't. And interestingly, none of those are voiceover. I was doing all the talking while I was doing the thing on the So if they start to sound frustrated, it's because I had done that same technique like 9 times, before I got my voiceover correct, because I didn't have the wherewithal to just do it and then sit down and do a voiceover for it, because I was trying to do these in one take, right? Just basically one take and then go in and edit out what I needed to.
Man, one take at 4:00 in the morning.
Yeah. Well, it didn't end up being one take, but I was trying. But yeah, it was fun. And I've thought about going back and trying to do some more now that my son's a little bit older and I'm getting a little bit more time on my hands. But I don't know. We'll see. I just have a hard time tying my job to the hobby, right? A lot of these content creators, these modelers to do content creation, one of the things I hear over and over and over again is it's cool that they're learning a new skill for editing and video and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, God, I don't want to do that when I get home from work, because that's what I do all day, every day. It's not a novelty for me. I just don't want to do it. It's the same reason I don't do commission builds or magazine articles where they're like, hey, will you build a whatever? No, I build what I want. If they want to publish it, great, which I've been very fortunate in that realm, but I don't have the energy to build something or work on something that I don't want to work on.
No, I completely share your sentiments there. I spend my day looking at documents and writing briefs and creating PowerPoints. And the last thing I want to do at the end of the day is write a modeling article. And I sign up for them once in a while, but I share your sentiment exactly, Ken. And, my dad was a dentist. He didn't build much because he'd be working on small stuff all day. And it was kind of the exact opposite, where he would go on the computer, do a bunch of research and write. So it's, it's pretty wild in that regard. And I share your sentiment. I haven't produced much in terms of, content outside of just taking a ton of pictures, but writing is something that I definitely don't want to do at night. So I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
Ken, you mentioned being published as we think about, modern, we'll say the last 5 years or so, where can people find your work? Military Modelcraft International?
Yeah. Military Modelcraft International, almost exclusively. I've had a couple in fine scale over the years, but pretty much writing for David. It's a good group of contributors. He's a good dude to work with. He's very forgiving for me forgetting to send stuff to him or, whatever. So, and the fine scale guys are great too. Don't get me wrong, but I've kind of built up a relationship and loyalty with Military Modelcraft, and that's important to me. So.
Yeah, Dave takes care of his people. Super nice guy, and we need to get you in that modeler spotlight. They need to do a profile on you.
That's right.
So, David, if you're listening, give him a shout.
That's right. The first article I ever wrote actually was for fine scale, but the Military Modelcraft was the first one to publish one, because it took 8 years for fine scale to publish the first article that I sent to them. And I think probably it was my fault. Actually, I know that it was my fault because I didn't know what in the world I was doing, right? I sent them a manuscript. It was 5,000 words and like 300 pictures. And Aaron was like, no, absolutely not. And it took him 8 years to get up the nerve to read that thing and try and make something out of it.
They were desperate that month.
Oh, yeah. They're like, here's one that'll take up some pages. And it was that Stu 42. But David's published my Croat M47 from that old Italy kit in 2012 or 2014. I don't remember. It's been a minute. 10 or 12 years ago was the first one that actually got published, which was cool. I mean, that was a bucket list thing that I always wanted to do. You just have to do it, right? I mean, you just have to knuckle down and do it. And I have buddies of mine that ask me about it. And it's really photos is and David has mentioned this when y'all talk about, photos is the thing that you have to get right. Just about anything else can be fixed except the photos. I went to public school in South Arkansas. If he can make something out of my drivel, then, as long as my photos are okay, which I feel like they're decent, then the rest can be done.
I told someone today on Facebook, there's the top 5 things you need to do to get published in order of importance are take good photos, number 1, take good photos, number 2, take good photos, number 3, write a semi-coherent sentence, number 4, actually finish the model, number 5.
That's right.
that order.
Yeah.
It's really not that hard. Most people can do it. And like I told is Peter Fizlotsky, the bar for model photography is pretty low. If you look around, right. Most people aren't that good at it, which is a shame because I wish more people were better at it. More people would probably get published. Magazines would have more contributors.
Yeah.
You just have to put in like a little bit of effort and be successful.
I've got a modeling buddy of mine who does beautiful photograph. He had somebody set up his camera for him. And I was like, you should adjust that. He's like, no, I shouldn't, because I don't have any idea what I'm supposed to do with it. Like, he just turns it on and pushes the button and that's it, right? He doesn't have the foggiest idea why he's twisting that knob. He's just taking pictures, but it works for him.
So I want to circle back to kind of what JP said and how it's, I wasn't around in the forum days. That I wasn't in the hobby back then. I was in forums when I got into the hobby, but it was all for like miniature gaming, which is obviously way different, different group of people. But yeah, getting to know people on social media and then meeting them in real life is really cool, because that's how you and I met. It was about a year and a half ago at the Atlanta show. It was the first time I went. Mark Sprayberry invited me, so I flew down there.
He's such a cool little child.
Yeah, he's a good little fellow. And I was looking over at all the amp stuff, and I see this beautiful Sherman, and I'm like, in my head, I'm like, I know that model. Like, it was like one of those moments where like when you see it on the table, you're like, I know that. And I just met Jesse Naughton in person for the first time, and we were kind of BSing back and forth. And I'm like, I'm walking around, I keep coming back and looking at it, and I'm like, Jesse, come here. He's like, yeah, what's up, man? Like, who built this? Like, I know who built this, but I cannot for the life of me remember who built this. I've seen this thing. He's like, oh, that's Childres. I was like, hot damn, that's who it is. And like, where is he? Can you please introduce me to him? And I think he went and grabbed you. And then, I mean, we talked hours over the course of that weekend.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, and, it was good.
And I bring that up, A, just so, I don't know, people have a frame of reference, and B, because your Shermans are amazing. And as a Sherman aficionado myself, I'm sure anyone listening knows that you're highly inspirational. And if I'm not mistaken, you kind of accidentally fell into that. I think is how you explained it to me. You didn't set out to be this amazing allied Sherman modeler, but you kind of did, not necessarily intentionally.
I just didn't want to suck at it. I mean, you know, that was kind of a low bar, was not to suck at it. But no, I guess are you talking about the junkyard one? Is that the one you were talking about, or the bald one?
It was the bald one.
Okay. All right. I feel like I try and put a lot of effort into stuff, but sometimes something just grabs you, right? You know, the Baldwin project was a picture that I saw that it was based off of. Like, I was coming through Pinterest, I think, which is a fantastic place to find pictures that you don't see very often. And I ran across this picture and I was like, I have to do that. And my ADHD grabbed another gear and I just started diving in. And of course, I leaned on John Hale and Dave Hobbs, you know, some of the granddaddies of Shermandom. And, you know, as you like to say, Hobbs will tell you what you want to know, but it's usually after it's too late.
It's his favorite trick.
I remember putting the cupola on that Baldwin, and I just get this one. It wasn't glued on; it was just sitting on it, and it wasn't a picture of that. It was a picture of the tank. I get this one line from Hobbs. He goes, "Is that the one you're going to use?" So I just messaged him. I go, "What?" He goes, "That's not the one you should use." I go, "Fine. Which one?" Silence. Like, he's just, you know, he's like, "Go crack a book and figure it out." So, you know, the other thing is Hobbs is fantastic. You know, a lot of that is just references too, right? It's what I've got a lot of. I've been buying David Doyle's book since he started the Legends of Warfare. Is that what it is? The Legends of Warfare? Buying those things like mad. So whenever I started both of those Sherman projects, I had, you know, a 3-foot stack of Sherman books here to reference off of. You know, that makes it easy. If you're willing to dig through it, you know, it makes it easy to figure out stuff. And then it gets part of my ADHD is hyper focus, right? You know, I have to know how the latch works on that whatever box on the thing. It's not good enough just to put it on there. I've got to figure out how it works and why it works and all that sort of stuff, which I think is why I put so much effort into them on things that will probably never be seen, but that's okay. It's what I like to do. The A1 was the same type of thing. You know, I always liked the Easy 8 suspension A1s. I love them. It's probably my favorite version of the Sherman. And I wanted one, but there isn't one, right? And that was part of the draw. And then one day I was rifling through some parts and I had like 7 or 8 pieces of a Italeri M32 left over from something. And I was like, wonder what we can make out of this. And like 6 months later, well, it wasn't 6, it was 6 months spread over like 3 years. Out pops that A1. Like I work on things and then they go away for a while, and I work on them and they go away for a while, and then I work, and then a show inevitably comes up, usually the Atlanta show, because that's kind of my start of my show season. So like the Baldwin, when I built that, I started that in October of the year before and absolutely throttled down through that build and finished it like 8 hours before I left for Atlanta. I mean, and I worked on practically nothing else. I think it just takes me a really, really long time to do things, because my modeling time, it's a little bit better now, but for years has been between 10p and 1a. That's my modeling time if I choose to do so. And sometimes I don't choose to do so. Sometimes I just as soon sleep. So it's really difficult to plow through things whenever I need to. But I don't know if that answered your question, TJ, but it's just like, it's again, it's just, if you're OCD about things, you know, having references makes it easy. Right. You can find anything.
Yeah. I think I can't remember if I said something to you. I definitely said something to John Hale. That to me, that's one of like the draws of building Shermans, is if you want to get that in the weeds, you're able to do it. And to me, it's fun because, you know, I've got a stack of them behind me. That one shelf is all Shermans, and then there's more over there, and then I've got boxes of parts, and it's like going through all those boxes. I'm like, oh, I need this hull, I need this piece over here. And then I got stacks of resin. I have 3D printer. I can print stuff that like Jackson's designed.
Yeah, and
it's just part of making it fun to me, right. And also agonizing over the details that no one really cares about, like the A2 that I was building. I was really worried about who made the turret, and it doesn't matter. No one cares. The only person that cares would be like Hobbs. But no one knew what turret was on there. So I'm like, I'm just going to have to pick one. And then, of course, after I do it, they come out with that, whoever, I can't remember the name of the guy that runs the Sherman Minutia page. But right before he published it, Hobbs sent me a list that he like, this is getting ready to go live. This is pretty much, these manufacturers use these turrets, and I had picked the right one. So I'm like, oh, thank God, because I wouldn't be able to live with myself if I had picked the wrong one, even though no one cares. No one really cares. I would care.
Yeah. Yeah, the turret on that Baldwin, one of the things on it, you can see a fraction of a sliver of the pistol port on the side. And Hobbs and I talked like two nerds for hours about whether it was welded up or wasn't welded up or whatever. And finally, we're like, screw it, I'm just going to pick one, right? He's like, either one of them's fine, just pick one. I was like, that's not good enough. He's like, just pick one, you know. So I finally picked one. And I did the welded up one just because I got to do something else to it. I got to sculpt the welds and have some fun with it rather than just glue a part onto it, which is also part of the reason why I do things.
I like seeing the welded up pistol port because you don't see it a whole lot. It's not a common feature, because I don't think it lasted very long. It was pretty unanimously not liked by crews, because then it was harder to load the ammunition into the turret without it, because then you had to go up through the hatch. The only thing on that photograph that I did not do was it had grousers on it, on that vehicle. And I went through every aftermarket and plastic set of grousers I could find, because it also has T48 tracks on it. And first of all, I had to convince all the IGMOs that were telling me that that's not possible. I'm like, here's a photograph, right? Right. I mean, you can see it. They're right here. They're like, they didn't do that. Maybe they did. They did it at least once.
They did it at least once, because I got a picture of it right here if you want to see it. I could not find any that would fit. Like, I could not do it. And so that was the one concession I made, and I literally lost sleep over it, because everything else was like spot on. Even making up I went into the books and found the serial numbers on it. And I picked a range based on all the stuff. I picked a range, and Hobbs gave me the thumbs up. He's like, yeah, it was probably in that range of serial numbers somewhere. I was like, ding, ding. All right, I can die a happy man. But yeah, the grousers were like the one thing that I couldn't do, and it just pissed me off. After all that work, I couldn't figure that out. And I didn't have time to make new ones.
And I know I've told you directly, but just so everyone else can hear it, your Junkyard A1, the other one you were talking about, that's the top 3 model for me from anyone.
Appreciate it.
That is absolutely one of my favorite models. The subject is amazing. The little vignette, if you want to call it, I guess it's a vignette diorama, the scenic base with the figure, however you would like to describe it, is amazing. And the model itself is expertly painted. I like derelict vehicles. I think it's a mark of skill to do a derelict vehicle and make it look convincing, because anyone can just throw rust on something like, oh yeah, it's abandoned. But
Right.
It's like the one, because you based off the one at Fort Moore, right? The one that was sitting there in the back. And
Correct.
anyone that's seen an actual derelict vehicle that's not just completely rusted out, it has a very specific patina and look to it that is nuanced. And it's not, in my opinion, it's not easy to do, to make it look authentic and not like you just threw rust effects and oils all over it.
No, and I painted that sucker like 4 times, so I can assure you it is not easy to do. It took, actually, I think it was 3. I think I stripped it twice, and finally, because it's not easy to get that look. I mean, obviously, lots of people have done it, very successfully, but it's definitely not easy to do, especially if you're going for something really specific. And that Sherman, which at the time when I took pictures of it was actually in a building that they called their Sherman shed, that's all that was in there was Sherman, just a long row of Shermans. And at that time, we could get on them and crawl on them. You could step from one to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, and crawl all over them. And I took a bunch of pictures of it there. That was a labor of love for sure. I love the comments when they'll put a picture of like the Italy M4A1 up, and some people are like, that thing's garbage. You can't do anything with it. Beg to differ. You can make a really not that model's actually, it needs a little TLC, right? But it's got some good accurate shapes and stuff, and you can really do a lot with that kit if you're willing to work with it. That was a lot of fun. The very first thing I did I think I told you this, TJ, was I removed the grouser vents on the back and milled out a hole to put the Azuka parts in. And I was like, if I can do this without ruining the hole, I'll continue with the build. And if I can't, I'm just going to stop here, because it was a make or break on the hole. And I got those holes milled out so that I could set those Azuka parts in. I was like, okay, now everything else is golden. We'll go from here. It turned out that was not the hardest part of it, but it was making those stupid fender supports was the worst part of that build, because there was no parts back then. There were no 3D printed parts or anything like that at the time. So I made those things all out of wire and hypodermic needle tubing and a lot of time.
I'm glad that you built that off the Italiari kit, because I think John built that kit, I think maybe even before I really knew John, and he had built us like a slammer build. I think that's the one that's like got the white squiggle camo on it.
World tank scheme. Yeah.
And I think you would post on Facebook, you're like, look, you can make something decent out of this kit. It gets crapped on constantly. So I bought one, and then this whole thing started, and it was sitting in my stash. And then we had the idea to build World of Tanks vehicles again. And I built the M4A1 Revelays, whatever, the French one. It's essentially an M50. And I used that kit with a photo etch, upgrade set, and it builds up really nice. It even Jackson's like, man, that's one of my favorite builds. I'm like, and this old dog, this kit is old as hell. But if you put a little bit of effort into it, you can make a decent looking vehicle out of it.
Yeah, I think it was 1983 or 4 was when that thing first came out. And I mean, you throw a simple photo etch set and a set of tracks in it. The tracks in it you could use as a fan belt in your car if you really needed to. You throw some tracks at it and photo etch, and honestly, there's other things you could do, but that right there will get you a long, long way towards a really nice model. And they're stupid cheap. Like, you can buy them at swap meets and stuff for nothing.
Yeah, I think I paid less than $20 for mine, on Amazon. I think because there's a couple different boxings. I just found the cheapest boxings. I'm like, I don't care about. I think mine came with a figure. I think I threw that in the trash because it's not a very good figure. But yeah, it doesn't take much. And the photo etch is not all that difficult to do for that. It's not bending German tool clamps or any crap like that.
The first Sherman I ever built was the Tamiya M4A3. the classy peg, like the OG boxing of it, not the new one with the Winter Soldier, the old boxing of it.
The big box, because it had
the big flat box with the bright green tank on the side.
Abnormally long box. Like, why is the box this long? The model is half the box. What is going on here?
And the plastic is almost black. It's so green that it's almost black, and it's as brittle as glass. I mean, it is.
Yes.
That was the very first Sherman I ever built. It was one of the early armor kits I ever built. I had that kit for probably a whole semester in school. And my parents, modeling was such a problem for me and attention. They would not let me work on models when I was in school. Like, I could read magazines and stuff, but I couldn't work on a model. But I'd go out there and look at the parts on it fairly often. I remember getting off the bus when I was probably 14 years old and running the 1/8 of a mile from the street to the house and building that model the afternoon I got out of school, right? And loved it. You know, I put the armor on the side of it, all the stuff that's would get you thrown off of Facebook nowadays. And it was fantastic, right? I loved that kit. And I actually found 2 of those old boxings, one of them still in the plastic, and I bought them at a show just to have one, because that kind of brought me back to, you know, the very, very beginning of my armor days. I think I'm going to build one. One of the boxes is open. I think I'm going to build it and just add some stuff to it, just see what can be done with it, just for fun. And then I'm going to leave the other one that's still in the plastic and just keep it, you know, for nostalgia's sake, because I'm stupid like that.
Hey, I almost bought one. I was at the swap meet at the local hobby shop. Someone had one for $7. I should have bought it. I mean,
yeah,
that's free. And I actually have one of the Italieri M4A1s downstairs. I think I got it for less than $10 at a swap meet. So it's there waiting, and it's waiting there. I think I have the original box in that, because it had the artist print on it. But the box I remember most from the M4A1 is those tester boxes that open from the side and you have to slide out. I'm like, whoever was the product designer of that, they need to be shot. That was like, right. Oh yeah, let's put a model kit with all these delicate parts that you slide in and out of this, you know, box that's basically made out of tissue paper,
right? And, with no bags around them.
With no
bags around the parts.
Yeah. I mean,
and Revell Germany still does that. It's good stuff. We should do a group build sometime. Just pick the oldest Sherman kit that we can find.
I'm down.
And do something with it. Build it as is, or doll it up, whatever. But you got to start with something that was built before you were born.
That actually would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, you could do. I'd even throw like the Priest in there, or, you know, any old school Sherman chassis vehicle would be great.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, besides amazing Shermans and armor, you also do some pretty cool other stuff as well. On the group there, you posted some really great Maschinen Krieger and some good busts and everything. Is that something that's kind of more recent that you've been doing kind of more of that, or is that something you've always done?
It's fairly recent. I have, as far as the figures go, Rusty Nail is one of my dearest friends, and he is a phenomenal figure painter, especially horror and fantasy, but he does other stuff too. And years ago, he had done a bust of a zombie, and I was like, I want to try one of those. So I bought the exact same thing and painted it exactly the same way as best I could. And they took them both to Wonderfest, and I got a better score than he did. And he was so jazzed about that, right? You know, and it could have been just that the judge was an idiot, but it doesn't matter. So that kind of got me into doing the bust. And then I didn't paint one again for like 3 or 4 or 5 more years. A few years ago, I was buying them, but I wasn't painting them. A few years ago, I was like, all right, I took Brett Avance. I saw him at Wonderfest. He's such a good dude. I love that dude to death. He did a painting class at our show 4 or 5 years ago. He came down and did a 1-day class, and I took that class from him, and it was like a revelation, right? It all of a sudden it came, I don't want to say it came easy, but I was like, he presented it in a way that I was able to understand it. And I painted the Ahab, the 12th scale 75 Ahab bust, and was really happy with it. And then so basically about once a year, I pull out a bust and I paint one. From then on, I like doing it. I would like to do more. But it just happens that about once a year, I pull something out and paint it, but I really enjoy it. So right after Brett's class, I started this Picasso figure of this tanker, and that's as far as I got on. It's been sitting like this for like 3.5 years. I haven't done anything with it. I just need to finish it.
That's almost done.
Right. I know. That's what's so aggravating.
Really done. If you put the head on the body, you could probably call it done.
Right. That's right. Just glue the head on. It comes with a turret ring that it sits in. It's actually a really cool figure. And it's loosely based on Brad Pitt from Fury, I think, or maybe they picked their pose from the movie from that. I don't know. But I have that one and I have the German that goes along with it. It's a really good figure. It's really dynamic. It was fun to paint. Again, I start things and then I don't finish them. There's half painted figures and stuff laying around everywhere. And then the machining Krieger. So I tried a Mac kit a number of years ago, and it was one of the silver plastic kits. I worked on it about 30 minutes. And I was like, never again. Nope, not doing it. And threw it back in the box and eventually gave it away. I saw them here and there. I saw the builds that y'all did for Nationals a couple of years ago, and I was like, man, dadgummit, I need to try that again. The first one I built was that Mark 44. It's the only one I've completed was that Mark 44. And, I should have built it right out of the box and just to figure it out, but, I can't leave well enough alone. So I added a few things to it and decided to pick a really time-consuming paint job to put on it. But I'm happy with the way it turned out.
Yeah, the foundry marks on that were really cool.
Thank you. That thing's lousy to travel with, though, because the hip joints and the knee joints are still loose. So when I get to show open a box, he's laying back like he's going under a bar on roller skates. He's laid backwards every time you open the box. He's pointed a different direction. That was a really fun. I've got another one here I've posted on the posse a couple of times, and I'm almost done building this little guy. I'm almost done working on that one. Again, I just need to stop doing other things and finish that,
Story of modeling, right?
Right.
Join the club.
Right. I have like 5 models sitting here in front of me that are just in various states of nothing.
One of my favorite pieces that you put on the posse is that shovel. It's just like an excavator shovel.
Oh yeah,
man, the weathering and the chipping. And yeah, there you go. It looks so good. And I'm not sure if there's a rest of that or if it's just the shovel, but it's great.
No, that one was I did a class at our local show. The last couple of years I've taught weathering classes, and that's what I did last year. I printed 25 of those backhoe. I was trying to think of something that kind of ticks all the boxes: rust and paint and dust and water and et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, oh, it's backhoe bucket. That's easy because I can print them off quickly. So I printed a bunch of those and then taught a handful of dudes all day on Friday last year before our show to paint those. And that was the test piece to make sure that I actually knew what I was talking about whenever it came time to tell these guys.
I was like, Scott just messaged us. It's the bucket.
It was the bucket.
Just the bucket. But yeah, that was a fun one. But I don't want to paint anymore. I painted like 9 of them in a span of about 2 weeks doing demos and teaching the class. I'm done with buckets for a while.
Yeah, that'll cure you once and for all.
That's right.
So Ken, I want to go back. You had mentioned, I should say TJ mentioned one of your models is top 5. As we think about, you've talked about it a little bit, getting into the hobby, growing in the hobby in the early 2000s. If what are some top builds, from your complete history of modeling? Like, what are the 1 or 2 builds that stick out to you that served or serve continuously as inspiration? Just curious, like what build sticks out to Ken?
Like other people's builds that I go back to and look at.
We talked about Phil's Panzer IV. Like, is there a Sherman out there? I'm just curious.
Well, I mean, I'll go ahead and reiterate. Phil's Panzer IV was a turning point in the hobby for me and everybody else. Sherman, honestly, I tell you what, TJ and I think we were talking here a while back about some of the Shermans that were used to be on Missing Links. They're still there. There's a Sherman and I forget the guy's name that did it, that's sitting in a field with snow on it. It's knocked out. And it's such a good build. It's just the colors are good. The weathering is, subtle and realistic to me. Like, it just, even now that model's probably been on Missing Links for 20 or 25 years. And it still just sings to me every time I go look at it. I'm trying to think of some others that kind of pop out. It's hard because, my interest ebbs and flows and stuff. So I find inspiration in different things, fairly often. But I'll say this, the things that I'm drawn to are the subtle, realistic finishes. I don't really, the kind of stylized things, they don't really do it for me. Right. That's just my opinion. That's subjective. But the models that I see, like I love Spud's stuff. Right. I mean, because it has that look, right? Whether it just does. It's fantastic. John Tolcher was a modeler that does really good stuff, really good armor and some cars.
That's a name I haven't heard in a while. He is a rust, the subtle rust and patina.
So good.
He's like a master.
Yeah, his stuff is, and I still have some of his stuff saved on hard drives and things that I go back to and look at. Anything really that I see is where people talk about control over their mediums and stuff, but I think the people that have the most control are the ones who can do it with the most subtlety and make it look good without having to be super punchy. But again, that's just my opinion. It's the John Tolcher stuff. I love. Sorry, dude. My brain. I have a hard time remembering names. I just got the diorama book, AK's diorama book. It's not the FAQ book. It's one of the thin diorama books that AK came out with, and it's Roger Hertman's. Yes.
Ammo did that book. It's Roger Hertman's. Yeah.
Yes, Ammo. Roger Hertman's dioramas are a huge influence too, and those because of the atmosphere that he puts in them. Right, when you look at some of Roger's stuff, his dioramas, you feel cold looking at them, or you feel worn out looking at them, and that's they're desaturated, they're dirty, they're gritty, they're not punchy and stylized. Like they're so good, and that's the kind of thing that I would strive for. In like the Baldwin thing, I tried to make that Baldwin look muddy and damp and just kind of muted. Like when I did the groundwork under the Baldwin, it's hard to tell where the tank stops and the ground starts. But I would imagine something that has lived on the ground for that long would be hard to pick that out. So I really am drawn to his stuff. There's a few others, but I like the feeling and emotion that comes with the color palette that people use on stuff. And that's, to me, that's usually kind of a muted and gritty look rather than a punchy. Like the Mark 44 is fairly bright colored, but it's also supposed to be in a sunny Pacific theme, right? So it's intentionally done brighter and lighter with the assumption that it's bright and sunny outside. So I try and give some thought to that when I'm painting things. Is kind of the whether the tank is on a base or not, is to try and think of a color palette to go with. And I totally got off the track from your original question.
No, this is good. This is good. One of the people you had mentioned, the Shermans that I've loved forever on Missing Links. The gentleman's name is Chi Hong An.
Yes,
I'm assuming Asian. An Asian modeler that. He's got probably 8 or 9, maybe even a dozen Shermans on Missing Links. And it's got the snow one in the field with the deck open. He's got the one on D-Day with the trunks that's sunken in the sand off Utah. And his stuff is so subtle. It's reminiscent to Rinaldi in that regard. Like you said, playing with the colors. His are typically warm tones. But I agree with you 100% around Roger Hertman's. And what I love about Roger's latest work, he's actually expanding out of, I think he was Mr. Hungry 1945 for forever. And now he's expanded into other subjects. He's got, I think, the Dingo crossing Arnhem Bridge. He's got an LVT with a bunch of Brits on it. And he's just doing a lot more work that's not that typical time frame. But I echo you. His style, the way he sets the mood and tone of the piece is just so good. Yeah,
and I think the thing that draws his work too, and other people's work in that same vein, is the figures. Like there's hardly any, if any, out of the box figures on that thing. And that's one thing I really aspire to, is to be able to tell a story with figures where I'm not like, oh God, I got to rifle through a box of arms and legs and try and make something work. That's not something I'm there yet on that, but I really want to. And his book on that is really inspiring and there's other people that do that really well too. Yeah. I really like, kind of muted, subtle paint jobs. And sometimes my own stuff, I find that, when it gets into a contest room, you look at it, you're like, it doesn't have the same kind of curb appeal that some others have, but I'm okay with that because I generally build and paint stuff for photography anyway, and that stuff shows up under studio strobe way better than it does in a contest room. So that kind of works against me sometimes, but I'm okay with that.
Yeah, for sure.
One thing, I'll tell you one funny thing. A friend of mine, he said, you have to have a fetish color. It's Jim Rice. Jim goes, you got to have his, like the first time I ever talked to him, one of the first times I ever talked to him, we were about to sit down and do a panel discussion at Atlanta. And this dude who I didn't know is behind me walking in. He's like, hey, what's your fetish color? I was like, what? He's like, everybody has to have one. I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, my fetish color is purple. And I was like, okay. So I'm thinking about this and I was like, so the color that I use in almost everything is Vallejo hemp. It's kind of this brownish tan color, and it is fantastic for everything. So when Jim got me thinking about that, I was like, okay, my fetish color is Vallejo hemp. But I put that in everything on a vehicle if it's supposed to be so that it ties the tones together from top to bottom and including the ground, right? And I think that's why a lot of my stuff has a particular coloration to it, is because I use the same colors, oftentimes, particularly that Vallejo hemp. I don't know why. I just love that color. And that is totally useless information for probably anybody, but there you go. It's free.
You mentioned subtleties and how you, I guess, would describe your style as subtle. And I agree. And it's amazing because one of the things about the Baldwin Sherman that I really like that I don't think a lot of people would notice, and especially if they don't know what they're looking at, is around the welds on the applique armor, you modeled it as that was depot or field applied, right? Which a lot of them were. That was an upgrade kit they sent out to the field, right? And tanks were retrofitted as needed.
Yeah,
which meant that tank was already painted when they welded that on, and just the subtle difference in color of OD around where the weld was. It's darker because it hasn't been faded, and then how it's kind of like over the star on the turret, just like a little bit. That level of detail that's what kind of like sets, thinking about what you're actually making and not just, it's, I'm making a Sherman that has a star on it.
Yeah. I found a picture of that, of some tanks having their armor put on in England, and the hoses, several of them sitting there, and they all had the panels welded over the stars on the side. And this, and they were spot painted. They didn't paint the whole thing. They just spot painted the panels and a little bit around the weld on it. And that was it, and then you could see the stars sticking out from beside it. The other thing, talking about the markings, I spent hours trying to find what direction the star on the roof pointed, and looking at pictures, I finally decided that the guy leaned up there, slapped the thing down, and wherever it landed is where it landed. And then they painted it, because I found several pictures of them rolled over, and none of them were pointed the same direction, and none of them were pointed forward. They were all just, I was like, okay, I'm good. Because it didn't originally have a star on the roof. And I was like, this thing's really boring from the top, so I need to do something. But I fretted over the placement of that thing for 2 or 3 hours before I finally just said screw it and stuck the stencil down and sprayed it.
I'm gonna have to try that, because I always think like, the star should be pointed forward, because that makes the most sense. But yeah, the guy that did it probably didn't care. He just threw that big old stencil up there and sprayed it, and then moved on to the next one. I don't think anyone's like, the star is 8 degrees off center, we should repaint this one. The dude probably had like 500 stars to paint that day. I don't think he really cared.
Yeah. My favorite is the vehicles you see where they have every size of the stars up and down the sides of them. It's like, obviously that guy doesn't have to take that thing anywhere where somebody's shooting at you.
Yeah. Last Chance I did I think it has like 8 or 9 stars on it. the star on both sides, star on the turret, star on the roof, huge 60-inch star on the deck, which I don't know why they thought that was a good idea. Star on the front. It's just like stars everywhere. Let's put more stars.
But that's the fun of research, right? Is finding out the why of some of that stuff.
Speaking of subtle tones, I have a friend of yours here. If I can get it to focus here.
As we say, looks like he's in WITSEC. There you go.
Yeah, the stupid fading background event. But man, this Death Dealer bust, just the tones on it, from one piece of armor, the leather armor to the chain. It's just really subtle, like what you guys have been talking about, and it just looks really great to the eye.
Well, thank you. I'm glad it looks subtle because I painted that thing over about a month and a half, and I couldn't ever remember how I did the armor. Every time I'd sit down, I did it a different way, which is probably where some of the subtlety came from. It's just the fact that I couldn't remember how I painted it. Yeah, that was that Death Dealer was interesting challenge. I'm glad you liked that.
Oh, it's a beautiful piece, really beautiful, and really appreciate it. It's got a place of honor in the collection over here, a friend's build. So
holding the back door open when the weather's nice.
Yeah, we have our show here on June 22nd. I'm thinking about getting all these out and kind of doing a display. We'll see if we've got room to do that. That'd be great, because we've got models from John and TJ and yourself, and
I think you've got more of my models than I do.
I probably do. TJ's I'm getting rid of this. Anybody want it? It's like, oh yeah, man, send it over. No, it's great. We really like to have friends work. Well, what are you working on currently? What are some projects that you're kind of excited about?
Well, currently I put up a couple pictures up. I've been working on this Grill 30 from Trumpeter. This is actually a 3 or 4 year old build, and my friend Ron talked me into getting this thing out, and we're supposed to do a buddy build on it, and that was like a month ago, but I don't think he's actually started his yet. So I'm kind of dragging my feet on it, but I'm just about done with construction on it. It's just a big hunk of empty plastic. I mean, there's probably not 150 parts in the kit. I bought a set of Friul tracks on it, which quadrupled the price of it, and added 4 times as many pieces because there's really not a lot to it. I designed and 3D printed a barrel for it just to make it look a little bit different, and then put some range finders on the side. And I haven't posted pictures of this I think I sent some pictures of this to TJ some time ago, but I haven't put any pictures on the Posse page because I really need to get back to working on it. So another Sherman build. This is a what if jumbo with a HVSS conversion and weighting stacks from kind of a Pacific 46. And it's been redone with a 105 barrel in it, which Hobbs said it should have had from the get-go. So I told him what I was doing. He's like, I should have had a 105 in it to begin with. I was, yes, sir. So that's the Ming kit that I retrofitted the AFE Club suspension to. That one is really pretty close to being done. I mean, it's as long as I can figure out what cupola is supposed to go on top of it, it should be ready for paint. And actually, to be perfectly honest, the Mark 44's paint job was kind of a warm-up to paint this in a kind of a youa-esque paint scheme. But that's really it right now that I've got on my. It's this other little machining Krieger. I kind of pick at it a little bit. I got a bunch of figures sitting around that I'm not working on. I cleaned up this vampire bust a couple of weeks ago that I printed, and then I bought a bunch of other stuff at Wonderfest that I probably won't ever paint because I've only painted, I think, one thing, and that was the Death Dealer that I bought at Wonderfest in 10 years. I have about 5 mortgage payments worth of figures in here that I haven't painted yet.
Yeah, well, we all do that, I think. But I noticed you have Andy's Greyhound there in the background. Is that something that you might get on the bench here at some point soon?
Yeah, I was thinking about it. I've got a whole bunch of 1/16 scale kits, and that one won't fit on the shelf. So I really need to start one eventually. I actually have some chain coming to do tire chains for it. Have some chain that's coming through eBay. That was another kind of OCD thing. I spent a couple of days trying to figure out the scale and pitch and all that nonsense and what pattern. I would love to do that M8. I love the M8, and I swore that if he ever came out with one, I would build it like right away. Of course, I said that about every other kid he's come out with too. And they're all up there. You can't see them. They're on the other side of that light box. But I would love to do that M8 because it's a good size, right? I've got a couple of the Shermans and the Tiger and stuff, and I don't have the foggiest idea where I would put those once they're built. I can't even store the box, much less the finished build. I love the Andy stuff. Love it.
Great value too. I mean, that Greyhound is basically the cost of a higher end 35th scale kit. You really just can't complain at the pricing at all. Are you going to do yours with fenders or without, or have you decided?
Probably without or a mix of. I kind of like the way they look without them, but I think it would add some texture and some weathering opportunities to maybe have some beat up remnants of the fenders. And I got that's on another bench over here, but I've got the Jason Crew to go with it. I was going to buy one or two of the figures. I was like, crap, for the price of 3, you can get 4, right? So I just bought the whole box. And they're spectacular looking figures. Holy smokes, those things look nice. Lots of plans. I am not struggling for ideas, not in any way, shape, form, or fashion. What I'm struggling for is time. Never do I sit around and think about what I should work on or what I could work on. There's always something.
So, Ken, you talked about what you're working on. What's the next show you're going to? I know we're kind of ramping down for the summer season, but I know fall's kicking off. You have your Arkansas show, I think September timeframe?
Yeah, our show is the last week in September, last weekend. It's the Friday and Saturday. I'm going to try, before that, I'm going to try and go to the Tulsa Figure Show, which is coming weekend. We'll see. If I do, it'll be the whole family going, which I'm blessed to have a wife that enjoys the hobby, that I met through the hobby, that likes going to shows and likes picking out models for me. She actually bought some for herself at Wonderfest, which is fantastic. Our show in September is the last weekend in September. So Friday, we have classes all day on Friday. Jim Rice will be back teaching his class again. We're going to have Wes Salazar from St. Louis, who's a phenomenal car builder and painter, is going to be there teaching a class. And then I'm trying to find somebody else to do a weathering centric class. I'm really deep into the organization and setting up the show, and doing that or doing a class. Both of them are a full-time gig, and I've been doing them both for a couple of years, and I need a break. Planning a legitimate class is a lot of work, and I need to turn my focus towards our show. We're doing a lot of things this year to try and bolster the show, try and do things a little bit, I don't want to say different, but just try and add value to it, right? We partnered with a wargaming group here in Central Arkansas. They're going to have demos going, and their price of admission was to enter models into the show, minis, which they were 100% cool with. They thought that was a really neat deal. So partnering with them to bring a kind of a different genre into the show. One thing that I'm really proud of on our club, but also our and by extension our show, is the diversity of subject matter. Like, we have paper models and aircraft and armor and ships and figures and people sculpting horses and Gundam and Machine and Krieger. I mean, you name it, literally there's somebody there, every month at the meeting building it. We've always had a really wide amount of models, or a wide variety of models there. And the show kind of reflects that. But we're trying to add value to it, right? Because we're at a disadvantage of where we're at. It's 3.5 hours to the nearest club from here. I mean, just geographically makes it hard to put on a good show. But we have good support from, the Louisiana clubs. We have people that come from Kansas and Oklahoma and Texas and Florida, and we have people that come from all over to it, because we try and put on a good show that that's fun and fair and all that sort of thing. We have some good vendors there each year, and we really pride ourselves on having a good, honest show. Like I said, we do gold, silver, bronze. We've done that for a long time. We're just trying to find ways to make it better, right? Which is but all of those things are working against geography, which is nothing we can do about that. But and you're competing with 1,000 other shows going on in the year, which it's cool that every club wants a show, but sometimes it's difficult to find an open weekend, right? And we're in Region 6, which is enormous, it's Louisiana to Kansas to, Texas, Arkansas. It's a huge region. So getting a open weekend within that region is tough sometimes. But, we have a good relationship with most all the clubs in the area. So we all try and scratch each other's backs when we can, support each other.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we'll talk about it between now and then, but give us the dates and times and location one more time for everybody listening out there. I'll put you on the spot.
Okay, so our show is the last weekend in September, which is Friday the 27th and Saturday the 28th. Friday is just classes, and then the contest itself is on the 28th. We do encourage people who are in the area to bring their models Friday evening while we're setting up, and then we judge whatever shows up. We judge that night to try and get a jump on things, which really helps speed things up, smooth things out for the next day. The show on Saturday is usually about 8 to 4 p. Try and get people in and get them out. And it's in Jacksonville, which is just outside of North Little Rock. There's plenty of parking. There's food nearby. There's hotels nearby. It's right off the interstate. So it's easy to get into.
Sounds like a good event. Hopefully people are good at supporting you, like you said, and it continues to grow. Sounds like you guys are approaching it the right way. So I don't see why it wouldn't.
I hope so. We've had a lot of discussions about how to make subtle changes. Last year, we had done a little bit of this, but last year we went through and bit the bullet, put everything on risers through the whole room and tablecloths on them, nice black tablecloths and all of that to try and make it, kind of up the production value on it, so to speak. I think I'm thinking hard this year about putting people's name, letting them put their names on their stuff. The notion of this kind of anonymous modeler thing is just nonsense. Scott, you talked about it with your upcoming show, and at least up until this year, your Atlanta has done it, Chicago does it. Like, it just, everybody knows what everybody does, right? It's just nonsense.
Absolutely, yeah.
To have these, and Ron Leaker, who is our show coordinator and one of my oldest friends, we were talking about it one day, and he said the trade-off of the fellowship of the modelers getting to know each other, I think, is way outweighs any potential badness that could happen, for lack of a better word, of having people's names on it. It's like, why not? Right.
Well, and when you're not having modelers compete against each other, where you're doing gold, silver, bronze. And like you said, if you've got a new guy that walks in the door, has never done a model show before, and you put his name on his work, it inspires conversation. People want to go up and talk to him and say, oh, I really like what you've done here. This is great. This is really inspirational. And it's the way to go. I mean, and it sounds like, you're a sharp enough guy. It sounds like you guys have really good judges and judge training. If you have the right kind of judges, I think TJ said it recently, if you are judging the model of one of your friends, you're probably going to be, if anything, a little bit harder on that model because you know what they're capable of and you know what you expect of them. And if they don't bring their A game, then, you're going to let them know because you know what they're capable of.
Yeah. And I've done, I gave Rusty a silver for something at our show. And one of the other friends was like, what are you doing? I was like, he didn't do he didn't do this. And then later I was talking to him. He's like, yeah, I just mailed that one in. He's like, I'd have been really aggravated if y'all had given me a gold for it for being your friend. He's like, that's stupid. So, if you got, honest judges and stuff, and we actually take a lot of steps to weed out that. We used to do when we were doing digital stuff. My wife wrote a piece of software that we could put in all of our stuff, and it filters and, collates all the scores, and you could see, looking at it, trends. You could see if, Joe, whoever liked P51s. You could see it just like that. And we would go back and adjust that. We don't use that anymore. Now, in place of that, we have 2 or 3 of us that go around and audit everything behind the judges, and you can see it rapidly. If a group of judges are being too critical about this or that, or if they're, biased towards something, you can pick it out. And which doesn't happen very often, but there's been 1 or 2 times when we've gently asked them to take another look. And, sometimes it needs to be corrected. Sometimes it doesn't, but then you just have to trust your judges. And most of the judges that we use, we have our club, and we also invite other people from outside to come judge, right? And all of them have been there for years and helped us out, and we help it there. So there's a lot of mutual respect, and and we understand that they know what they're doing. So yeah, it's important to be on the up and up.
As a quick aside, I like the fact that you mentioned trusting the judges, because a certain national organization prides itself in the quality of their judges, but then doesn't trust their judges to know the name of the people of the models that they're judging. So pick a lane and swim in it. Either you have the best judges in modeling that can be fair no matter what, or you don't. And to me, if you can't be fair judging your friend's model, you shouldn't be judging. And there's evidence of that we all know about that doesn't really need to be mentioned. People do it. They shouldn't, because I've judged my friends' models. JB's done it with me. You can ask Ian Bonner
that dumbass
about painting headlights. I mean, that was, and I had just met Ian, and I had to tell him afterwards, like, dude, you would have got first if you had painted your headlights. It's not that hard. And he had the best model there in that category, but he didn't paint the headlights. And you have to take that, following their rules. We had to take that into consideration. Then we did the same thing with Jonathan Anderson, with Doc and his King Tiger and the tracks. They weren't right. It was probably the best thing in the category, but I'm like, dude, the rules say it has to be this, and you didn't follow, because of the rules. We had to be honest. Yeah. Would I have liked to have given him a first? Absolutely. Because who wouldn't, but you got to earn it. But that's awesome that trusting your judges. That's the whole judging work is built on trust. It should be, at least.
Yeah. And it's hard. Judging's hard. It's, if you take it seriously, even a little bit, it's hard. It should kind of give you butterflies in your stomach to judge people's stuff. If it doesn't, you're probably being too, lackadaisical about it. Right.
Yeah, I would agree.
When I went in there the other day to help judge at Wonderfest, oh my God, dude, I was nervous because I wanted to do it right. And there's probably some things that I got wrong. There were some pieces in there that I heard other people say later on, well, that should have got a thing. Well, yeah, it should have. It's kind of like what you said, T. Yeah, it should have gotten a gold, but it didn't, because of the last 15 or 10% that was mailed in, right before the deadline or the thing. Yeah, it should have. And I would love to have given it that. There was a couple that I desperately wanted to find a way to give them a better score. But, again, when it gets down to the rules of the road, it is what it is.
Yeah. I mean, the open system and the AMP system, they all have sort of methodologies in there that want to, give the modeler the benefit of the doubt, but that doesn't replace the modeler's efforts and the execution that they do on the piece. And man, it just sounds like you guys are doing all the right things. You've got continuous improvement efforts. You're using really good judges. I think identifying the modelers will be great. I mean, I think there's really a trend, and it's from IPMS clubs, it's AMPS clubs, it's, shows like mine that are kind of unaffiliated. I mean, there's a movement to providing a better experience for people that come and attend your show and share their work and those kind of things. So anyway, it sounds like you're doing a great job, and man, one of these days, maybe the some of us can get over to your show. That'd be great.
Yeah, that'd be cool. We'd love to have you. There's a number of our guys in our club and gals who are posse members who are fairly active on the Facebook page. So, they all enjoy it just as much as I do.
Yeah, I think, Ken, I want to call out, you travel with a good group of guys. We had a chance to meet them in February, had a chance to catch up with them at AMPS. It's Ron, and is there two Daves or Dans?
There's Dave. There is a couple of Davids. The one that y'all met. Yeah, there's a couple of actually there's like 7 Davids in our club. And legitimately, there's like 7 Davids in our club. There's 3 of them that are active on the posse from our club. So, and y'all have met maybe 1 or 2 of them.
Yeah, David Gear's
2, I guess.
He's a good guy. David Gear.
Yeah. So they're all. I'm really fortunate to have a group of guys that we travel with, and have for we've all been piling the cars and going to the Atlanta show for over a decade. I've gone for about 15 years, and been taking a group for longer than that, longer than 10 years. So, and this last year we brought, several new people, had some guys come up from Louisiana, spreading the love because, when it comes down to it, shows for me is about the conversations, right? I went to Wonderfest. I didn't take anything. You can't enter a model if you're judging at Wonderfest, and I still had a fantastic time. I didn't have anything on the show table and I had a wonderful time. And I've gone to Atlanta before without anything to take. And it's about those conversations and standing in the hallway or the hospitality suite or whatever. I mean, that's really where it's at for shows for me. Hardware's nice. Of course it is. But, if it wasn't for, and I say this a lot, I would not drive 24 hours out of 36 for a $4 medal. I'm just not going to do it. I'm not going to drive to Chicago 12 hours each way for a one-day show, get the chance of, having somebody determine that I'm worthy of a $4 medal. That's no shade on the contest, not at all, because the people that they have in there and all of these shows are fantastic. But if it wasn't for the people and the personalities and things like that, it would not have the draw that it does.
Well, John, any parting shots for our friend here as we wrap it up? I think TJ's head is bobbing. I think he's fallen asleep on us.
But yeah, Scott, I just want to take a moment to say thanks, Ken. It was great to talk to you. I think if anything's certain, we're definitely going to be having you back on for another discussion, because I think we just hit the tip of the iceberg, and I'm super excited to dive into some more discussions, especially about judging, the camaraderie, even what we're working on. So looking forward to catching up again soon.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity to come on here. It was really a good time.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been a while since we want to talk to you. So thanks for doing it, and appreciate you taking the time to let the listeners out there get to know Ken a little bit better.
So I just had to send you a figure. I'm like a deadbeat dad. I had to send this kid a toy so he would talk to me.
Man, so beautiful. Really appreciate it. But yeah, that's not how you do it, folks. But it was a coincidence. Anyway, it doesn't hurt. Yeah. Anyway, thanks a lot, Ken. Appreciate it.
Yeah, guys. Take care of y'all. See you.
Cheers, Ken.
All right, bye.
Well, listeners, we hope you liked that segment as much as we did. Ken's an awesome guy, and we certainly are going to talk to him more, and we can't wait to see him again at a show. With that, let's do a little cross promotion. The Plastic Posse is just one of several great modeling podcasts. If you're interested in more scale modeling content, you can head on over to modelpodcast.com, where you will find the links to many of the great podcasts about our hobby. The Posse also recommends several excellent modeling vlogs, such as Stephen Lee's Sprue Pie with Frets, Chris Wallace's Model Airplane Maker, A Scale Canadian TV with Jim Bates. Thanks for the F-35 video, Jim. Really appreciate that. Tamiya, that new little Tamiya guy looks awesome, and I really want one now. And then also David Brian Bridges over at DB Scale Model blog.
Hey, Grant, what time is it?
It's time for merch. God, I don't sound as good as Jensen when they do that, do I? If you would like to rep the posse, check out our awesome merch at our Triple P Spring page. You can find coffee mugs, t-shirts, jumpers, and even the world famous Triple P lounge trousers. You can order all of your stylish Plastic Posse merch at the website www.loungetrousers.com.
All right. Thanks, Grant. And thanks to all of you for riding along with us for episode 95 of the Plastic Posse. We really appreciate your support, as well as the support of our awesome patrons. Again, we also want to thank Tankcraft, Tamiya USA, and AK Interactive for supporting what we do. Remember, the Plastic Posse is available on YouTube. We will return in 2 weeks with more discussions about scale modeling. In the meantime, if you have feedback, suggestions, ideas, or you just want to drop us a line, you can post on the Plastic Posse group on Facebook, or you can send your feedback to us via email at plasticpossepodcast@gmail.com. And having said all that, there's only one thing left to say. Yeehaw!
Before we end this episode, we'd love to give a shout out to the people that support us most. One of the ways you can help support the Plastic Posse is becoming a Plastic Posse Outrider. If you want to become a Plastic Posse Outrider, it's super easy. Go to Patreon and go patreon.com/Plastic Posse Podcast and set up a recurring donation there. These contributions help offset the cost of bringing the Triple P every 2 weeks. There are 3 different tiers, support starting at just $1 a month, and there are some great benefits to being an outrider, like early access to podcasts, premium access to hosts, the chance to appear on podcasts, and the exclusive Triple P content and social events at model shows. Take it away, Doug.
Let's recognize our amazing deputy marshals. These guys step up and help the posse do what we do, and we sincerely thank them for their support. Brett Marquardt, Greg Williams, Nick Wolf, Brian Clark, Sean Earl, Black Hot Hat Scale Models, Ben Hardaway, Craig Jarbo, Adam Jackson, Red Beach One Studios, James Mirando, Casey Gray, Mike Norris, Stephen Rodwell, Rick Cooper, Eric Carvina, John Hale, Eric Kane, Logan Hansen, Paul Burdett, Tim Gidcombe, Dan Newman, Robert Blocker, Tyler Moore, Derek Post, Craig Flynn, Scale Model Craft, Ken Childres, Nick Butta, Drew Gardner, Scott Hall, Frank Perrone, The Voice of Bob, Jeremy Diamond, Ryan Smith, Terry Wilkinson, Chris Lovewell, Andrew Callis, Ethan Eidenmill, Steve Baker, Joe Porche, Patrick Brown, Jay Kidd, Brandon Gentry, Lee Fogel, Robert Klein, Mike Ewing, Toadman, Model Doc, Doug Reed, Greg James, Les Workala, John Everett, Uncle Buck, Mark Bradley, Eric Brubaker, Jeremy Moore, DB Scale Model Studio, Matt Johnston, Jeremy Elliott, Mike Talley, Previous Seat, Mediocre Middle-Aged Modeler, Dan Knopfel, and JC Osborne.
How about those posse foremen? These are the posse outriders who give the deputy marshals a hand, and we also thank them for their support.
Therese,
Scott, Raphael, Warhammer Adjacent, Russ, Stefan, Mikkel, Lavar, Gil, Mike, Michael, Steve, Winston, Scott, Emery, The Krieger, Aussie Modeler, William, Keith, Sunkist, Jeff, Eddie, Ross, Warhoff Models, G. Baker, Tom's Stuff, Crazy Loca, Len, Cliff, Damien, Green, Cody, Tim, Nukeman Mike, Ash, Irish Pat, Paul, iBones Models, Mr. Grizz, Jackson, Joe, Chris, Robert, Jamie, Steve, MD Models, Papa Steve Munsell, JV, Eric, Matthew, and David.
and of course, our $1 and free Posse Outriders. We appreciate all of you, like Mark Sanderson. Thanks a lot. Lastly, a request for all of our listeners. Would you please consider posting a review of the Triple P on your favorite podcast platform? Each 5-star review that you leave will help other modelers find the Plastic Posse.